I thought about it, and then I was like, I didn't wash it.
So good bleach.
Pressure washer? Right.
The clock on the wall says it's time, so I'm going to call this meeting to order. It's a regular meeting of the City Council for Wall Beach on Tuesday, March 11th, 2025. If you have a cell phone, if you please put it on vibrate or turn it off, I'd appreciate that. And then if you'll please stand, Reverend Tim Black is going to lead us in an invocation, and he'll remain standing, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance. Reverend
Good
Black.
evening. Pray with me. Our Heavenly Father, we honor you tonight by asking your blessing upon this city council and our wonderful beach town. Lord, we thank you that you are the hope of the world. Thank you for your kindness, your loving mercy, your amazing grace, and the peace that you give us in our heart. We thank you for our incredible town, our beach community, and we are blessed to live in Fort Walton Beach. And Lord, I pray for each one that is here at this council meeting tonight. I pray over this agenda that is set before this council. I pray for each council member, for our city manager, city mayor, and various city officials, and for each citizen that is here tonight. And Lord, our beaches are the best in America, and we're thankful, Lord, that tourists are visiting us and bringing their dollars. And we just pray over all of our businesses that this would be a great spring break season. We pray that you protect our town during spring break. Lord, we pray over all of our first responders, every police officer, deputy, firefighter, medical personnel. Lord, we thank you for our military that, Lord, they live here. They're part of it even as veterans. And we pray for every man and woman that serves our great country. God, keep them safe. And so, Lord, tonight we lift up all these things in your mighty name, the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Council, I've got a minor change to the agenda. We're going to postpone item 9.3 until the April 8th meeting. Other than that, I have no changes. And if we can get a motion to approve the amended agenda, please.
Motion to approve the amended agenda.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilman Jeter, second by Councilman Allegretto to approve the amended agenda as presented. And that'll bring us to, I guess we need to vote on that. Council, please vote. It does pass 5-0. Mr. Berry is working election tonight. She's up to help certify. And Mr. Schmidt may be here in a little bit. Right. Yeah. All right, that'll bring us to item 5, recognitions. And Mr. Reeves, I'll let you start that off.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, thank you. It's always an honor to work for the council, and I think one of the most honorable things is that when our employees get recognized for their years of service. And I'm going to start with the general employees, and then the chiefs. It's great that they're here. The chiefs are going to come forward and do their department appreciation as well for their service. So I'm going to start with one of our 5-year people, one of the service workers, Julius Swanigan. Is he with us tonight? He may not. Not all of them come, unfortunately, but it doesn't mean. That's right. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Our next one is one that's been with us. I'm sorry, Kim, did I give you the wrong one? That's Brian's. I'm sorry. And then, I'm sorry, Julius is also, I'm sorry, let's talk about Brian Swinson. He is also a 5-year recipient. That's the police officer. I'm sorry, I'm kind of messing this up, Mayor. Mine is Sean. I guess let's move to one of the biggest ones, which is our Sean Thornton. Will Sean come forward? Is he with us? Gosh, well, I can't say enough about Sean. He's been with the city as a service worker with us in Public Works. He's one of Danny's people. He's been with us for 20 years, and we really do appreciate his effort. And if you guys would give him a big round of applause, I think that's huge. I think that's all of mine. I think I only have 2. Chief, do you want to come forward? I did a good job organizing yours, but I didn't organize mine. Here's yours. You have 2 5-year guys, and then Vince has been with you a long time. Thank you.
All right, we're going to call, we got 2 of them here tonight. First one we're going to just announce because he wasn't able to make it. That's Antonio Nunez. He's been here for 5 years. Our next gentleman is engineer Matt Pritchard. He's also been here for 5 years. And this next one is a special me too because we came up in the fire service together, even though he looks much older than I do. But it's Captain Vince Music. He's been here for 25 years.
If Chief Beige, Police Chief Beige will come up. Chief, you've got two of your officers as well to recognize.
Yes, thank you. So I have 2 officers to recognize, then we also have some other awards we'd like to pass out to our officers. And the first one, I'm going to go with Marcus Montgomery. So Marcus Montgomery, if you come up, he's been with the city for... He's been here with the city for now 10 years, and he serves in our traffic homicide and does a lot for us on patrol. It is not unusual to get an email or response telling how much he's gone above and beyond for stuff that he's done in our community. So Marcus, I'd like to present you with your 10-year coin and certificate, and thank you for your 10 years of service with the city of Fort Walton. We like to make it a family affair, so. And what I'm going to do is real quick, I'm going to read out our 4 officers of the quarter. After I read out the 4 officers of the quarter, I'm going to read out our Employee of the Year and then our Police Employee of the Year. And then I'm going to ask all 4 of the quarters to come up here so we can take one grand picture. So the first officer of the quarter is Officer Dan Ordoki. And Dan received the Officer of the Quarter for his quick response to an armed robbery home invasion suspect. And he was able to make an immediate arrest, remove 28 grams of fentanyl from the street, and also an arrest of a convicted felon with a firearm. So that arrest greatly improved the safety within our community. So he was for our first quarter. For our second quarter, the officer was Kenny Sermons. Kenny Sermons is also here tonight. And Kenny responded to a call. It was a medical emergency. And you're going to see how we stand at the intersection of public safety and public health. That the lines a lot of times for first responders have blurred a little bit. And Kenny Sermons went to a call with serious bleeding, put a tourniquet on the person, and was able to take control of the scene while additional officers responded, and was still able to manage the person that was bleeding until the fire department and emergency medical personnel arrived on the scene. And Kenny's actions greatly aided in the saving of the life. So he won for the second quarter. For the third quarter, Officer Thomas Zakowski is not here. He was off duty, witnessed a motorcycle crash. Once again, the motorcycle was bleeding profoundly, and he put a tourniquet on for the motorcycle injury and was also a critical step in saving the motorcyclist's life. And for the fourth quarter, we have Kendra Stalls, who's also here. Lieutenant Kendra Stalls, in addition to working as a patrol lieutenant, took on the role of probably hosting our biggest and best Winter Wonderland ever up at the fairgrounds. Winter Wonderland has become a staple here in this community and within the city of Fort Walton Beach. And Lieutenant Stalls was out there every single night coordinating and also putting in the effort and labor to ensure that the event was smooth and that we were able to give donations both to PAWS and to Toys for Tots. So those are the two organizations. So those were for our 4 quarters. Now I'd like to have Petra Kublik please come up. Petra. So Petra is our professional employee of the year. Petra was hired initially as a communications operator. And when Chantel left, who was here, who had just over 30 years a few weeks ago, Petra knew that Chantel was about to leave. She had volunteered to come and start doing some time in records, really looked for no recognition, picked up some loose ends in records, was always helping in records, and that gave her the insight into records. She then applied for the record supervisor and was selected as a record supervisor. In addition to working as a record supervisor, she still helped out in communications when there was a need, such as the Snowmageddon that we had and other items that went on in communications. Whenever they're short, she has no hesitation in working extra to help out in communications, and always volunteers to help out with Candy with a Cop, Winter Wonderland, any other event that we have at the police department. And she's a true team player. She looks to see, and one of the city's core values is continuous improvement. She was always looking to see how we can improve processes, whether it's warrants, subpoenas, the record system, and we just implemented our new Tyler records management system. And she's been a critical component in ensuring that the transition to the new records management system was as smooth, efficient, and effective. So Petra, for that, we'd like to congratulate you and award you Professional Employee of 2024. Thank you. I just want to stay up here for a second, Petra. I'm going to talk about Brian Swenson. So Brian Swenson not only gets a 5-year coin and a certificate, but as a bonus, he is our, and where is he at, Brian? Will you please come up? He is our Officer of the Year for 2024. Now, Brian used to work undercover, and recently now he's been reassigned to patrol, so he's trying to transition from working undercover. So he's kind of like in a quasi-uniform, and eventually next week you'll see him in a full uniform. It's a slow transition for him. But Brian worked in our special investigations section. Hold that part. Worked in our special investigations section, and the work that he accomplished spanned several quarters. It started in 2023, rolled into 2024, the first quarter, and then kind of ended in the second quarter of 2024. And it was a big narcotics investigation, which led to the arrest of 19 suspects, numerous grams of fentanyl and meth taken off our streets. And this operation was just not in Fort Walton Beach, but it was in the whole western panhandle. It stretched from Escambia County all the way back through Okaloosa County and then probably a little bit into Walton County with the operation. 19 people were arrested, and 2 of the 19 were also arrested and charged on a murder charge for a fentanyl overdose death. It's a very complicated case to track everything back to a single supplier, but Brian was able to put together all the pieces and make an arrest for a murder in addition to the 19 drug dealers that were taken off our streets, greatly improving the quality of life for the residents in our community. One of the biggest things that we battle with is opioids, fentanyl, and addiction within our community. As a nation, we've lost over 100,000 people every year for the past several years. Preliminary data this year looks like that number may be in the high 80s or low 90s. So the efforts of stringent enforcement, coupled with the other things such as the post-overdose support team that we do out of the police department, has really moved that needle in our local community. So Brian, I'd like to commend you for your efforts and award you the Officer of the Year for 2024. Congratulations. And if you want to step over that. And Devin, if you want to take one with... All 3? Yeah, all 3. And then if you can call all the officer of the quarters. Oh, no. If we could have all the officers of the quarters come up. We got crazy glue, so we're good.
right. Tell you what, the city of Fort Walton Beach is truly blessed with dedicated and professional employees. And I know I speak for everyone up on the dais that we appreciate each and every one of them. So thank you. That'll bring us to item number 6 on the agenda, which is the consent agenda. Only one item on that, which is the city council regular meeting minutes for the last meeting. If I can get a motion for the consent agenda, please.
So moved. Second.
Been moved by Councilman Jeter, second by Councilman Schmidt to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any comments? Please vote. Does pass 6-0. Thank you, council. Brings us to item number 7, mayor and council comments, and tonight we're going to start with Mr. Meade.
I'll save them for the end.
All right, Mr. Schmidt.
I'm good, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
All right, Mr. Smith.
Oh, wait till the end.
All right, Mr. Walker.
Same here.
Okay, Mr. Allegretto.
Yeah, I'll wait till the end as well.
All right, Mr. Barry's counting votes.
Save for the end.
Peter. All right, and as will I. So now we're up to item number 8, public comments. This is an opportunity for any of you in the audience to come up to the podium and speak on any item that is not on the agenda. And please limit yourself to 5 minutes. Just come up, identify yourself, and you're cleared to speak. Seeing none? Do I have one? Oh, Mr. Holmes.
Michael Holmes, 114 Evans Lane, Fort Walton. Kind of tough follow-up when you have employees like that and the recognition that some I've done. But briefly, just 2 items. 2 meetings ago, I think there was some discussion amongst the council about the rec center improvements. And I believe Mr. Smith is the one that said, let's phase this. Let's start putting some of it together. Probably excellent idea. I think that's what we need to do. We've been kind of floundering on that for quite a while. We've got some money there. There's money earmarked for it. And let's see some dirt hit the ground. And on the second item, I'm here on my own accord, but 2 meetings ago, Freedom Beacon Park had came in and they were asking for waivers some of the fees that they had on their development. And I think there was some questions as to when all of this was put together, when they were asked to annex or when they asked to annex into the city, as to whether the 2-year timeline is how it was applied. But if my memory serves me right, the council had already made the ordinance to allow them to annex. They didn't ask for the annex ordinance to be written. And at the time they came in, they didn't know or have any idea of the amount of time it was going to take to do that. And from, I believe what Mr. Odom's request was his final agreements is what he's trying to finish now. He just wanted those fees waived. And we didn't even get a second to Mr. Schmidt's motion to discuss it. I think it's, you know, what the previous councils did is always try to encourage business development and people coming into office or coming into Fort Walton and build things. You know, as Mr. Lee's here tonight, you know, to see about getting some changes. The city wants to try to encourage development and make things that are conducive. And as the council had, actually their desire was to allow him to annex, but there was not a time limit set on the time that he had to come and ask for that. And that might have been part of the confusion the last time. So since no one seconded the motion, it is per your rules that you can bring a motion up and rediscuss it. And I think it would be great if somebody would make a motion in a second to rediscuss that particular item. Just my thoughts on it. I was sitting on the council at the time that Mr. Odom had done that, and I think it's a great addition to the city. So I'd appreciate your consideration on that. Yes, sir.
Could I ask you, and I believe I was on council as well, but I don't remember discussion, but I have heard from a number of people that that was the agreement that was made with Mr. Odom, and I didn't have that information at the time, and so that it wasn't an appropriate time to interact, and so I would like to know more, if you know more or if anyone else does, because if the city committed to doing something, that's...
Yeah, you know, I mean, it might have been oversight of the council that was that time to maybe not clarify that role or that part. But, you know, we all know that that size development would probably not be finished in 2 years. And I think there was some hold-on drawbacks and stuff that he had at the time when he was trying to put the process together with the government. And so, that's probably what caused it. I don't know. Those would be questions he would have to answer. But I know the intent of the council at that time was to limit the time you could annex in the city to the 2 years, not to the time that you would be eligible for whatever benefits were offered. And there may have been others, I don't know. The staff may be able to speak more to that.
Well, Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, we've already invited Mr. Odom back for the next agenda. It's already been agended and it's already ready for delivery to you guys. Mr. Odom will be here to present. His request was that we have a full council. Unfortunately, we didn't receive a second on that, so Mr. Holmes is correct that we'll be able to bring that forward for your discussion and maybe a review one more time with all of the members being present. We didn't do it tonight because Mr. Berry was going to be out of the area, so I've already reached out to him to speak with him about that. He'll be here to present as well, and told him that wasn't required because he'd already been here and made a trip once, but we would like to discuss it again.
So it'll be on the agenda on the 25th.
He'll be here on the 25th, yes, it's already on the agenda.
Thank
Thank you, Mayor.
I'd like to know from, Mr. Reeves, I'd like to know from Mr. Beatty, our city manager as well, what the situation, what the circumstances were surrounding it.
On your direction last time, we watched the video that Ms. Barnes provided, and I agree with Mr. Holmes. It was not a 2-year limit on that, and I think Ms. Cobb there was a little bit of a gray area there, but it was just my opinion. But I felt it. I was kind of like Mr. Holmes. Let's reach out and invite him to maybe talk with him about it. He said, well, I'd like to come back and take another discussion with you all. So I allowed him that as much as he's done for our city, and went ahead and agended it for the next meeting. And I wanted Ms. DeBerry to be part of that as well, knowing that she was going to be gone for the canvassing board. I thought it'd be right for him to have the whole council. So you guys will see that next. I haven't spoken with Mr. Beatty, but Mr. Holmes was here, and
I think it'd be important. I think if it's said that we committed to something, then we need to know what staff committed to.
agreed.
If we can't pull it from
I
the
can
video.
reach out to Mr. Beatty if you'd like and see if he wants to come. I'll be glad to at least speak with him.
Thank you.
I'll do that before the next meeting. If he'll come, that's great, but.
Or if you can represent us.
Yeah, sure, I'd be glad to, yeah. Thank you,
What the
Mr.
facts,
Holmes.
because
And
it was-
I appreciate the consideration. I agree with waiting on Mr. Berry. I was here last meeting, and I think some were sick and some were out taking care of sick kids and stuff, and so I absolutely agree. But I would appreciate the consideration on it as far as reflecting on what the other council have done. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes.
I think I'll be okay without a microphone. I'm going to sit right here if that's okay.
Yeah, that might go.
Can you hear me back there? Everybody hear me?
Yes, sir. No, it's for the
You're gonna record it
recording.
for us?
It's for the recording, it's not for the volume. Yes, sir, thank you.
All right, well, glad to come back here after a year being away. Nick, I think you're going to be a great mayor. Mayor, you did a great job. Bryce, Juggy, David Schmidt, Mr. Walker, Kimberly. I'm Tom Marr. I live at 225D Alconice Avenue Southeast, Fort Walton Beach in Camp Walton Village. I'm a military officer, retired from the Army as a colonel, came here and now still own a real estate appraisal business right over here at 139 Bill Parkway, and I'm really wedded pretty much to Fort Walton Beach at this time. I came in here about a year ago, and I talked about a lot of things, but the two most central things I spoke about was the fact that I thought that I was a good representative of the silent majority, and I felt that the silent majority would rather have the taxes raised a little bit to be sure we have enough police officers or firemen or whatever, et cetera. Well, it turns out this amendment in the last ticket here, last vote, proved me wrong, because the bulk of my silent majority went the other way and voted to restrict how we spend money, and I'll get back to that in a second. But first thing is, I think there's a lot of good things about Fort Walton Beach, and I want to commend two people, Bert Rhodes, who's in Public Works, and Alyssa Burleson, who works for Chris. I don't know exactly what her title is, but she's the one that's the beautification officer for Fort Walton Beach. Camp Walton Village took advantage of your program, though, even though we're not an old complex. What we did make it look so much nicer, and so I'm very appreciative of that. In the last year or so, two of my brothers and one of my sisters came down here to see me, and we took them around, and they, along with I, were really amazed at how clean the city is. No paper, trash, junk, old boards lying around much of anywhere, and that's a credit to the old council, some of which are here, Mike over there, David, John, Nick, and as well as the new council. So we're transitioning even more. So I think that's very good for the city. One of the other things I talked about was migrants. I haven't seen any migrant issues in the city, at least none of the damaged cities like Denver and Los Angeles and that. They're being well taken care of. And pretty much the same thing with homeless people was one of the themes that night. My office, my home, I go straight over First Street when I go back and forth. I catch the migrants there, but they're not too bad. So I'm appreciative of what's in the city. You know, I grew up in Pennsylvania, went in the Army, probably couldn't retire anywhere. Just luckily, like most things happen in life, retired here. And not only am I in Florida, I'm in the best part of Florida here in the Florida Panhandle, and like the chaplain said up here with our beaches, which I don't get to see much anymore. We're just a very fortunate community. Now, let me go back just for a second to the amendment that was passed. I don't agree with that, although it's democracy and the vote of the people went the other way. The only thing I would ask you to do is just watch this. Don't let it get so bad that you can't come back from it. The chief has told me he's 4 police officers short. Even within Camp Walton Village, it's a pretty careful place for most of the old people. We had a fire alert down there because we had an alarm, and the fire guy showed up that quick. And just a week ago, I fell out of bed. I just slipped out of bed, and once I'm on the floor, I can't get up. We called 911, and 2 fire guys or first responders were there pretty quickly to help me out. So we want to take care of our citizens every way, shape, or form. If that means we need to spend an extra $1 or $2 to do that, I think that we should do that, because I think, even though you don't have everybody in here, there's a hell of a lot of people that apparently didn't vote for this amendment thing that would prize their safety as being pretty high. So, Mr. Walker, you're not going to talk me out of another $1,000. You talked me out of that last time. Yeah, you're quiet. But thank you very much, everybody. I'm proud that I'm here. I think both of the boards have done great, or councils have done great jobs over the last several years. You know, just ask that in the future, we make sure that we don't let all these public services go down so low that you just can't get them back. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wish to speak tonight on items not on the agenda? Thank you, everybody. All right, thank you. That'll bring us then to item number 9. Ordinances on first reading, item 9.1, 2159, ordinance amending the Land Development Code, Section 5.04.32, livery vessel rentals. Ms. Cotton.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 2159, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Fort Walton Beach, Florida, amending Chapter 5 of the Land Development Code relating to livery vessels, providing for findings of fact, regulating livery vessels, modifying the definition of livery vessels, requiring permitting and a formal application process for livery vessels, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. This is first reading. Chris.
All right, thank you, Mr. Frasetti.
Thank you. Chris Frasetti, Affairs Management Director. So this item, as you may recall, has been up in front of council a few times for discussion. So kind of catching up where we were last. The last time the item was in front of this council for discussion was back last November, November 19, 2024, that we're presenting an amendment to the existing livery vessel ordinance to look at making some changes. Following that hearing that evening, the council did have a few small recommended changes, modifications to it to bring back. However, following that meeting, me and my team did receive some feedback from a few different businesses with some questions, some concerns, some comments about the proposed changes at that time. And so we had some good conversations with several businesses, and kind of started taking down a list of all the items that they were specifically asking to look at, to change, or maybe in some cases include into the proposed ordinance. And so following those discussions at the end of November into December, we actually scheduled a meeting with all of the livery vessel businesses that we had contacts for in the city. So everyone that was active with a BTR within our department, we reached out, emailed, and contacted all of those businesses. And on January 22nd, we met with 16 individuals from various businesses within the city here. And in that meeting, what we did is we had a draft ordinance, and we went line by line and kind of just discussed and looked for feedback and discussion for everything that we were drafting up. Following that meeting in January, my team made changes to that draft ordinance, and we sent it out to the same group of everybody that attended that meeting, asking for feedback. And we got just a couple of comments back in mid-February. And so based on those additional comments that we received back, we made a few additional changes to it. And then we worked on preparing the item. We sent it back out for their review again, asking if there's, kind of going once, coming twice, any other comments. And we did that. Also, kind of similar time frame while that was happening, Okaloosa County held their required waterway safety meeting at the convention center. And my team, we were set up there with a table to be able to answer questions. That's a required meeting for all the operators in the county here. And so we had a table there. We actually had copies of that draft ordinance that we were able to discuss individually with anybody that was showing up at the table there. So we're trying to kind of get the word out, get the feedback, and work on drafting this update, kind of based following that last discussion in November. So what we've done and what we have in front of you all this evening is a proposed amendment to the Delivery Vessel Ordinance. It's basically a kind of strike-through underline to replace the existing ordinance that's been in place since 2021. And we've summarized all the changes here throughout it. The main thing, main items to note, really what we tried to do is incorporate all the safety standards. There was some feedback that we received from the businesses about wristbands, about some of the other safety standards that are required countywide, as well as in Destin. And so we actually received some requests just to incorporate that into our ordinance, just so it's consistent. So what we tried to do is really kind of add all that safety language in for consistency across the board. And also has the language regarding the permit process. Currently, everyone went through, got a BTR. They had to submit these various documents, such as copies of land lease, parking plans, storage plans, things like that. This puts it into just an annual permit process that we know these businesses, they can kind of change each year. The number of vessels may go up, may go down, which affects parking and storage and some of these requirements. So what the language here does is that each year, if you're not making any changes or you're reducing your vessel count, you can basically just say, you can submit a statement saying no change, we're good to go, and your permit's reissued without issue. If you're increasing it or somehow other modifying it, that would have an impact on the code requirements, then you have to just submit updated parking plans, storage plans, things like that get reviewed and make sure they're in compliance with the code each year. And so we've had a lot of back and forth feedback comments. We did receive some additional comments today. A few continue to be in support. However, a few did have some concerns with opposing. That would prefer to see it, either pared down or more or less removed. The additional standards from the code and kind of in place, just have to follow the standard land development code requirements as most other businesses do. But with that, happy to answer any questions. I think we have some representatives here as well. Scott, has anything else to add?
Unless council has questions.
Okay.
Outside of the existing ordinance, what effect do these updates have on the existing livery businesses?
So it's they still, we're not saying they can't operate. It would just it would be that annually they'd go through the permit process. We're not proposing any fee for that at this point, but it's to issue decals. A lot of what they has come to us, they've asked for is to be able to kind of weed out the bad operators, the ones that aren't operating legally in accordance with state statute. So for this, if we have decals, it's something that whether it's us or police or the operators themselves can see having the decals. So for them, it would be that required permit process each year. I said just to go through. Annually, they do have the BTR. We are reviewing for most of these same standards already, though.
fueling plans, all that stuff, not going to change from what the existing rules currently already are.
Right, we tweaked some of the language, basically just they have to follow the fire code, prevention code, but really that's where they work with the fire department.
Parking standards are not changing.
We're not touching parking standards, we're not touching zoning for where it's allowed. This would like open up the residential type. Our goal actually would be to hopefully be able to enforce that better. We did put the definition for the bareboat charters, which is one of those ways that we learned over the last couple of years that some people were trying to get around the livery rules with saying they were a bareboat charter and kind of trying to find that loophole. So this tries to close a lot of those loopholes in here.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from council? Mr. Walker?
Yeah, thank you, Chris, and thank you to the staff for the great background. That's very helpful to me because this has been probably one of the second or third most researched, read, and looked on for me as a one. I've spoken a lot in the community. It's a concern. Many have the same concerns that I do, that it's a government overreach. It's not needed. It may be overbearing, overburdensome on them. And so as I'm looking through the history of it, I want you to check me here and see if I've got this right. Florida Statutes 327, I believe it is, and all of the ordinances that follow it. It governs livery safety regulations, operations of those. And while 327 referenced in the handout says the city may, it doesn't say that we're required to inject ourselves into regulating their businesses or whatever. So as I was going through it and kind of started at the last meeting thinking about it, although it got delayed, is like, what problem was this set out to solve? Both 2074, I believe it was, which was the one implemented or adopted in 2021, right?
Yes.
And then, so what would you say in the new one that 2074 didn't have, that we said, you know what, we just got to make it better, we got to solve this problem? What was it that required this new 2159? And in between there, 2159 today, 2074 then, we had 2153 got brought before council. Unfortunately, it died a very big public death. It was trying to impose a moratorium on a group of people, and they weren't notified. They didn't know they were out of compliance. And reading through the notes here, I won't get into all of the details of it yet, but it's really confusing on who's in compliance, who wasn't in compliance. We've got 8, we had 70. We're thinking there may be 200. There's a lot of information in here for me to try to digest. So what would you say between 2074 and 2159 is the big problem that we wanted to solve, that 2074, after much work by staff, people, the businesses came forward, we created this wonderful ordinance, and it wasn't sufficient. And now we need 2159. What was it that wasn't solved?
Sure, yeah, I think the biggest thing, the lessons learned through that time was some of the definitions like I alluded to, the bareboat charters, and some of the ways, the language in there, that there were people trying to find loopholes to kind of exploit that existing code. Then the other part is the permit process. We were utilizing our VTRs, which really probably is the best place to have that process going through. The VTR business tax receipt, is really more of a transaction, a business tax for operating the business. So we were trying to use that to kind of check the boxes off to make sure everyone is in compliance. And we were kind of trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. I think doing it that way, what we learned over the couple of years, so there was a 2-year kind of grace period, transition period there when it went into place at the end of 2023. And we were working really into 24 to make sure everybody that was existing was in compliance. That's where we were identifying, man, there's some things there with the definitions, with the process itself that it's just not probably correct. It's not efficient. If we try to clean up this language in here, it's just a much clearer process for us, for our staff, but also for any applicant coming in saying, okay, yeah, here's the dates. We outline some time frames from some time periods for applications and permits annually that make sure everybody's just kind of on the same playing field here, and it's all clear.
Thank you. In addition to that, then what would you say prompted 2074 to come into being to begin with the state already having their own set of regulations and regarding the library. What would you say prompted the bringing forward 2074?
Sure. If I recall, thinking back to that time, I believe it was, we were starting to see a big influx of these businesses, a lot of them coming from the Destin area at that time. And if I recall, there was some concern over just the number of boats and safety in the area, seeing a lot of these businesses pop up. And they were not identified in our city's code whatsoever. It wasn't defined as an allowable use and, any type of use in there. So I think it was just seeing, a big influx. I think it gets around that 2021 timeframe that it came up, or if I recall correctly, with the previous city manager.
So does 2074 or 2159, does it limit the number of businesses that can be in town?
No.
So it doesn't solve that problem that we were concerned about? Because I don't remember that one, that was before my time. The only one I remember being addressed as a problem, although I didn't have any citizens come to me and I didn't have any come up here speak to us, but it was the allegation that rogue boat renters behind their house off of a private dock were problematic and a cause for concern, not the business operators that were coming to get their BTR, and they have an interest in self-regulating. I think many from the coalition came here and spoke and said how good they were at self-regulating because it's important that they keep their customers safe, and they didn't really appreciate us trying to inject ourselves into their business when it's their business and there's nobody better at it than them. We're surely not.
Sure. And I will clarify, although we don't cap a capacity number of businesses per capita or anything like that,
Sure.
what part of that goal too is we set parking standards and allowable zoning districts for it. So it got rid of all the residential possibilities there. It put it into the MX2 zoning, which kind of puts it specifically along the waterfront within our city here. So.
Sure, and definitely parking, I recall being a part of, I think Mr. Smith brought it up, and we were able to remove that portion of it. There was a little bit of confusion about marinas versus libraries, and so yesterday and today, as I was looking over it, I was looking over the charts, are you saying there's zero parking requirements related to library?
No.
Or do we go by the chart, I think it's 6.02.
Chapter 6 has the parking requirements.
Okay, so I went and looked at it and saw that a marina has, it's its own individual, and it has one spot for every 2 slips. Mm-hmm. And then the library has 1.5 for every boat, if I remember that. So, let's just take Miss Garcia. She's here in attendance. She's across the street over here. She's got a marina. And so her marina is operating under 1 parking spot for every 2 boat slips. Someone comes to rent a slip or 2 from her because they've got 4 boats. They're not in existence yet. They come up and they say, hey, I want to release a dock or 2 from you, or I got 4 or 6 boats, and they come to you to get a BTR. What parking standard is going to be applied to that new business under that BTR?
We are going to look at delivery use as a more intense use there. Now, if there's shared parking, because she has other businesses as well on the property, we can look at shared parking studies and agreements done. But we are going to look at that more intense use. The marinas, in that example, Ms. Garcia, marinas do allow for boat rentals. So, herself, if she has her own business operating there as, part of her marina, she can use that as an accessory use. Any others that are coming in as a different, non-associated business to her would come in as a delivery vessel operator like any other delivery vessel.
So they're going to be, the one that wants to rent a slip from her will be, have a greater, well, she's already using it on her other businesses and the marina. And so that causes a problem for the new person that wants to rent a space with 4 boats. They're going to have, is that 8 or?
That's where the parking studies come in, because if she's not, if she's no longer using those as marina spaces with deliveries, then they can be replaced. Obviously the calculation is different. We do work with each individual business. Those situations, and hers is certainly unique, different I think probably than the other deliveries in town here. We've met with her some over the last year or 2 to say, hey, look, tell us, show us how many parking spaces you have, and let's figure out how we can make it, fit within the code.
And with 2074 being back in 21, and I know there was a period of confusion about compliance, how many citations or ordinance or code violation are on file?
I apologize, I don't have that number offhand.
What would you guess it would be?
So I know we cited last year probably a dozen or more of them. Most complied. I don't know the number offhand. How many?
What would you say were the prevailing non-compliance?
So within all those requirements that are in the existing code there, whether a lot of them were parking plans, some were storage plans, some didn't have copies of submerged land lease. It was really kind of just a variety of those. A lot of times they have, all but one item they were missing, and a lot of times it just took kind of a lot of follow-up, just, hey, do you have this or that, whichever one they were missing.
Were any rogue boaters cited either by code enforcement or law enforcement that you're aware of?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
how many of those do you think?
I'm aware of at least 2 or 3 residential properties.
So they were at was it law enforcement or code enforcement? Because I know it's supposed to be Chief Beige.
So I know in code enforcement we cited and took a few of those through the special magistrate, through the whole process in town here.
And those that you cited, did you cite 2074 as that's what they were violating was
Yes.
ordinance 2074,
Yes.
which is already in place?
Right, yes, sir.
Okay. And 2159 doesn't enhance or does enhance or those road ones? Because again, I'm going back to road because when I came up here, that was my understanding of the purpose and intent of these things was like we're all concerned about road riders and those that aren't complying with it, and then it turns around, it's like, well, here, and we smacked a bunch of ordinances on livery business that was never the problem.
Sure.
It was the road riders were the problem, bareback or whatever else. So that one problem that got them interested gets turned around, and I see them. I see them getting smacked with it quite a bit. And I know they showed up at the meeting here and gave some input, and I've continued to hear from them as well. And on that, because I know that we were talking about a sticker, a process. Back some time ago as well, we, under the pretense of safety and security and good for all and that, but golf carts were required to get a sticker. And then 4 or 5 years later, I can't remember if I'd made it on the council yet or if it was pre, but I think I was up here, I asked how many had been inspected. I think I did it in an email. How many had been inspected under that? And the answer was 0. And so, as I think about this massive amount of ordinance and regulation and this and stickers and that, and it's like, who do we have that's going to be going out on the water? Well, we can't go out on the water. It's my understanding 327 prohibits us from, as a municipality, anything on the water is out of our control, correct?
We do work with Coast Guard and Fish and Wildlife.
Gotcha. They're already doing their thing as they see unsafe boating, they see other things. So, I just looked at it, I said, my gosh, what a bunch of ordinances and regulations that we're putting on small business owners. They're trying to just run their business. That, as far as I still don't know, I still don't hear any problems about what they are doing. Road riders, apparently we've already got 2074 in place. We're implementing that. We're taking them to the magistrate, law enforcement, and other things. But to continue to just place regulation after regulation on these small businesses, it's extensive. And I just kept asking, what problem are we trying to solve with your time, your staff's time, law enforcement time? What are we trying to solve? And I still don't know what the answer is, other than just to get them to comply with the ordinance. And of course, it's no surprise, it's no secret that a sticker doesn't. You said there's nothing proposed, but I think $200 was mentioned in here as a roundabout possible. The $200 is mentioned in here somewhere, correct?
That was our estimated cost to the city to just purchase the stickers, not to charge.
$200 total to purchase the stickers.
Yes.
So I've talked with many of them, and I hope we'll hear from them tonight and come up and talk about some common sense, simple things. I really like the idea of no launching from public. If that's law enforcement, code enforcement, we see them out there launching or renting or behind the private houses. Sounds like we've already got that in place. But the rest of the stuff, I think, is just burdensome and won't be enforced and won't be looked after. It might be used as a threat to somebody to do something, but I don't know that it's good for the community. So thank you for your time, Chris.
Mr. Allegretto.
Thank you, Mayor. I share many of Mr. Walker's concerns as well. I really have two questions for this portion, and one is going to be a very similar question to what Mr. Smith asked, but for the businesses that don't currently exist. So what does this change from 2174 to this new 2159? Say I move here, I'm coming down from northern Alabama, and I've always loved pontoon boats. I'm going to open my own business, and I'm moving to the city of Fort Walton Beach. I have to comply with the previous ordinance, and now what does this change for my new business if I were to start one?
It adds the permit process in there, really clarifies the permit process. Currently, we're asking for that information when they come in for a BTR, but we can't hold a BTR up for that. So what happens is we have to track it on spreadsheets, and that's what my staff, we keep track of every business that comes in on a spreadsheet and which document they're missing, and then we just kind of keep following up with them. If we give them a reasonable amount of time, and if they're not complying, then we refer to code enforcement through that process. This would put an actual application in our system that would go through like a review process as any other planning application, permit application, and it would just be processed through there versus having to keep track of spreadsheets and manual process. They would still have to go through a process. It would change for them where they're submitting it for, really.
Right. But it's not making it more difficult. No. You're just saying now we would actually have a process that would say you have to have all these documents before you can start the business.
And there's dates in here saying you wouldn't have to have them by, which gives us the ability, code enforcement, then to say, hey, yep, you missed your deadlines here. We're going to cite you by these dates.
Okay. Secondly, I too share the concern of enforcement. You know, we've talked about this in the past with, it seems to be, and I'm sure there are others, but it seems to be that this is one of the most regulated industries that could possibly exist already, through Florida Fish and Wildlife, through the state, through the sheriff's office, through everybody that's on the water, through insurance companies, through, I mean, it's pretty mind-blowing. And I am also very hesitant to say, hey, let's put some more on them just because they're in a municipality. To that point, your department has, in my time up here in 8 years, has seemed to be chronically understaffed and underfunded. Meaning we just don't have enough people in your department. And I know we've recently added one person, is that correct?
Yeah, a couple years ago.
Over the last few years, which is probably still 2 or 3 people short for what we as a council have tasked you with. In keeping our city clean and following our regulations and making sure that, you know, everybody that contacts us through the means that we've improved for people to reach out to our city and say, hey, this is a problem. We don't have enough people to go and follow up on all of those things all the time in the way that I think most of us would like, and that's not your fault or the people in your department. I trust that you are working hard, and I've heard nothing but good things about the people that do work in that department. It just means that there's not enough of them. And what additional responsibilities would this put on your department, or would this make it easier for compliance for your department?
So honestly, this would make it easier for compliance.
Okay. And in what ways?
Right. Sorry.
And in what ways?
So all of the dates, the specifics about the permit process, the renewals, gives us black and white language in the code that we don't have now. So the challenge is now, you know, kind of where we're at, you know, so my opinion, I think, and the staff, is that if we say take all this out of here and just make it an allowable use in maybe the MX2 zoning district like it is now, and parking standards like many other businesses have, that's cool, that's easy to enforce. If it's operating in a zoning district that's not MX2, then it's a code violation. What we have now, there's just gray area in the code now, and so when code enforcement citing, there's a lot of, they're going, our code guys are looking at it, or they're getting a report for it, then they're going to planning, they're talking through the ordinance, saying, man, what's the code violation, what can I cite here or there, because it's just, it's gray in the current code. This putting in the way the permit process works with specific, hey, here's the documents you have to have by these dates each year, it has to be renewed between November 1st and March 1st of each year. Those are things that just kind of take away a lot of that, like I said, that gray area there. That would make it easier. So I said either we kind of go one way and just do away with all of it, makes it easier, or we just clarify what's in what's intended to be in there, if that's what's intended by the council to be in there.
Right. And then one more just quick follow-up question, if I may, Mayor. When you were referencing the ability to follow up on these, is there anyone that's operating a livery business right now in the city limits that is operating that business outside of an MX2 zoning area?
I believe so. We've had one that we had in code enforcement last year, and we just did a repeat violation on.
I guess I should have also said that has a BTR.
No.
Okay. So everyone that has a business tax receipt is operating in the right zoning and for the most part doing the right thing. And are any of those current livery business out of compliance and in a ongoing code situation?
That's where I don't know the exact numbers. Most of it come in compliance, I will say. There may be a couple that are missing 1 or 2 items here or there.
Well, I remember you kind of answered that before for Mr. Walker, but like still ongoing to this day?
I would have to check that one.
Okay. But so the answer's got to be yes, at least one.
I would say good chance.
Okay.
But I do know there's at least one outside that zoning that's currently in code that's going back to the registry soon.
Sure, I got you. All right, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Others from council? Mr. Meany?
So to that question, how many do you think, how many operators do we have that are not complying with the current ordinance?
Say if I had to guess, and it really is a guess, I'm thinking somewhere, 2 or 3, maybe 4. The challenges over the winter, a lot of them aren't operating. So what happens is we, once this time right now March starts up, that's when we're seeing them back operating and we're catching any that aren't operating in compliance. We worked through the winter and got the list, 95% of the way there, I'd say.
But we've got a spreadsheet that shows
Yes.
that somebody's missing
Yes.
something along the way.
Yes, and the last I saw it, there were, probably 4 or 5 on there, but that's been probably a month or 2, so that's where I'm thinking there may be a few less.
And before I got on city council, one of the things that, I'm just, for a timeline, I've been on here for 1.5 years. So, but one of the things that I felt that would be beneficial would be an ordinance that's not just the city, but an ordinance that's throughout the area. So that if a business wants to operate in 1 or more municipalities or the county, there can be some consistency and not having to relearn these, different rules for different places. I know it's difficult for builders, and I would assume it'd be the same for these businesses. So it's my understanding what you've done has created a more uniform rule that's applied throughout the area. Is that close to being correct?
Yes, there's really a couple pages worth of this ordinance regarding all of the voter safety information, the employee safety information was provided to us by the Water Sports Coalition to try and make it consistent with the county and other cities around here.
And that would be the livery businesses?
Yes.
Okay. And if there was that consistent ordinance, it would be my hope that other municipalities that don't have such an ordinance, if it's adopted unanimously, we'll take Niceville, but let's assume they don't have one, I don't know if they do or don't, but they could look to Destin, Fort Walton, and the county to say, they've interacted, they've worked, this seems to be something that we can adopt, so that if a new business wants to come to our area, we can lay out the rules as opposed to, I'm not being critical, we were reactive before, we had a spreadsheet, we didn't have an application, didn't have a process. So it's my understanding what this does now is creates consistency among the areas. I'm sure there's some nuances. And it creates a real application process. And I'm not being critical, but but this is what you do. You adopt a rule, and then over time, you figure out how to make it better, and that's why we're here. So when one asks why are we here, it's my understanding to create that consistency. Obviously, it's not exact, but closer, and a real application process so they can go to the city's website from Georgia or wherever they're coming from, where they want to come down and open up that business and say, this is what I have to have. So that's the ordinance I would support, and it seems like you're nodding that that's the case, that we're, okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Meade. Anyone else on council have questions for Mr. Purcell?
I do just have one follow-up question that's just very basic, if I may. So we've had a lot of discussion, or a lot of questions for you. Just plain and simple, nothing here makes it harder to operate a livery business that you already have?
I don't believe so. This,
in your opinion?
In my opinion, this really just clarifies the process for us. We didn't restrict the numbers of, vessels or zoning or use or anything like that.
Or fuel cans.
Fuel cans, yeah, that's still in there. We really tried to clarify a permit process to put in place. And so there's a lot of voter safety, a lot of safety information, employee safety information that was actually provided to us from the businesses that we're not even, we kind of took their advice on it, so.
And I do want to also say that I sincerely do appreciate the way that you've handled this particular issue from start to now. It's been a far better process than many other things I've seen the city do in the last 8 years. The way that you have personally and your staff have personally reached out to this business community and gathered that input and then put that on paper has been night and day different than many things that I've seen done, not by you, but by people. And then secondly, nothing in here makes it harder for a new business to start. It just simplifies the process for you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thanks, Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
As a kind of a follow-up to that, doesn't make it any more expensive either, does it?
No, sir, there's no fees proposed. Anybody in this?
Mr. Walker.
Yeah, all those things, they're nice until they decide, hey, it's costing staff. Now we've got the application, we've got the review, we're having to follow up with the document and our stickers and time staff, and now we're going to need to implement a fee. And that's just the way regulations, to me, appear to just come to be. It won't hurt, it won't cost you more, it's easy. But it's not any easier compared to what I'm guessing. 2074, is that our first ordinance for the city regulating livery business? So if we go back pre-2021, it was easier then for someone to come in and operate a livery, right?
Pre-2074, the first?
2074, the
yes.
ordinance, which was in 2021?
That's what we're currently operating on today. We believe this would make it easier for us to be able to process these. If we went back prior to 2074 where there was no ordinance for them, then...
Right, if there was no 2074,
yes.
That had never come to be, there's no, it's really easy for them. We encourage them to come here and conduct business safely, and I understand there's a coalition of them, and I went back and looked at the January 23 meeting we all had up here, and I listened, and I see a lot of the faces out there already that came up and spoke, and they weren't happy then with what was going on, and so the state regulates it. It's apparently the county's got some stuff, Fish and Wildlife has got some stuff, the state's got some stuff. I'd like to take you out, I'd like to take you out of the business of doing any more work on it. Just get out of their way, let them conduct business. If there's someone out on the waterway being unsafe or dangerous or hazardous, spilling gas, dumping oil, sewage, FWC takes care of that, not us, correct?
Yes.
So they're under regulation if we weren't in it at all. They're still regulated. It's just not by the city.
Right, yeah, what this would, if we were to undo that, then we're not looking at any control of zoning, really parking standards. It's the uplands requirements that, a lot of that initial 2074 came from, was looking at, hey, what areas of the city do we or do we not want these in? Do we want to establish parking or buffers between uses? If there's, some type of residential use, hotel, motel, transit lodging. It's those types of things, that we would handle as a city versus FWC or another outside entity.
Well, a livery business is well documented in 327. We can define them. So MX2, if that was the one, MX2, we allow livery business. That's that. If we find one operating outside the MX2, that's a violation of code without 27 pages or any other plans, right?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Safety and if down there on the dock it's unsafe and boards are falling in and the lights are off and there is no bathroom, and we can still cite them for those problems, unsafe hazards, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Anyone from the public wish to speak to this?
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Ben Merrill. I am at 8 Bay Court here in Fort Walton, a local business owner. I sent some emails out today. I talked to some people about the ordinance, and I actually wrote something prepared, but after hearing the comments tonight, I'm going to go off a little bit. First and foremost, I want to thank staff and apologize to staff a little bit, right? We had the opportunity to work with them, and if I could, Tim, Chris, they've been an ally in this, working with the water sports to help us get to a point. But from a business standpoint, after 2021 to the 2023 timeframe, when we had 100 people in here and we packed out the hall and talked about it, when this new ordinance came about, I think there was almost a fear from our end of like, okay, well, we did get invited to the room. That's something that Destin did not do. That's something that the county did not do. So that was great. But I think there was almost a picture of we were limited on what we were allowed to ask for. And I'm not going to put that on staff. They didn't do that, or council, I think. But talking to some of the other business owners, we were just like, well, what can we do? What concessions can we make to make this work? Looking back now and hearing some of the comments to say, we would like it to all step back. And to think that that was a possibility. That's the only way. We got pretty good. We got pretty good, and I think there's some water sports businesses and liveries that would go, we'll take this. I just believe that we can do it better. If we walk it back to where we adhere to all our state regulations, you guys mentioned them, I don't have to relist them. We are regulated. We provide a commercial lease to show that we're working out of the mixed use, the proper zoning. That then, and then if you want to define liveries in the LDC and say, here's the parking standard, I'm okay with all of that. But beyond that, and Mr. Mead, I'm going to address that Destin didn't do it right. I'm in the county. My livery's in the county. Full disclosure, it's not here. I hate having my livery in the county. What they've passed is absolutely horrible. It drives myself crazy. It provides hours of extra work, redundancy, and my business license that was $35 is almost $2,500 in the county. Fort Walton's not imposing that. It's not imposing that yet. It's not something that we want to give a foothold to. So I would ask that you guys look at a regulated industry by the state. We adhere to that. We adhere to whatever is in the LDC as far as what a business is defined. That can be settled. If it's not, if it already is, great. And then we'll turn in our commercial lease to say, here we are, we're operating legally. And then the woefully depleted office with code enforcement and everything, they're like, you're good, and we can go off after rogue operators that are clogging up boat ramps, that are renting out of the back. And because if that's an issue and safety is an issue, where does safety issues come from? Non-insured, uninformed boaters that are getting somebody's personal boat, and they don't care. Their boat costs $300, $400, $500 a month. They can rent it out twice a month. They can rent it out the month of July and pay for it for the year. They're going to do it. And if I can comment on how many people I think are doing that, it's dozens. It's dozens of people that are doing that. It's 1 and 2 boat operations, but it's all over the place. It's not 2 or 3, and that's just because I'm in the industry. People call me about it, and they're like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. And I'm like, I wouldn't, because it's illegal, and they're going to start cracking down on it. So I've been called by more than a half dozen people, and I know they're out there. So I appreciate the time. I would ask that you would consider that. Full disclosure, I hope to be on the other side of the microphone. You guys know I'm running. I'm running for city council because I care about small business. This one is near and dear to my heart, even though, again, mine's not in the city. So I'm going to fight for all small businesses like this. And I know a lot of you guys have that same standpoint. So we're regulated. Let it happen. We are going to practice good operation. So I think you should trust us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mayor, can I ask him a question?
Sure.
Ben,
yes,
just out of curiosity, I understand you're wanting to go back and go through just the zoning, and you're saying you're willing to accept some land development code requirements, parking, whatever else. What in this ordinance that is written right here is not acceptable to you?
So I believe a couple of things. One, when we talked about the stickers, it's just an added thing. If I send boat 8 out on my sticker and it gets damaged, anything, and I get a new boat and I put it in the water, I'm gonna call my insurance. I'm gonna add this HIN number and I'm gonna send it out. What are you guys? And this is not a challenge. What are you guys gonna do about it? It gets in a wreck What are you guys gonna do about it? It gets, anything happens to it, it's involved, it's not even gonna come back across council. It's just going to be like, that boat happened, FWC is gonna come to my location, we're gonna do a report, they're gonna make sure I have insurance, and it's all gonna happen. So it's one of those things that is already happening with the county. It's the little, and don't get me wrong, I think this one does clean things up. And again, we're like, this is better. There's no lie about that. But to me, as Mr. Walker kind of spoke to, it's a foothold that more things can come. And no offense, like just understanding this, I think I can bring a lot of light to this, but saying, hey, let's be kind of in regulation with the county and Destin, we don't want to. Let's stand apart from them and be better. That all started with boat captains wanting to put an end to pontoon boats under the guise of safety, because pontoon boats were blowing up, they were, and fishing charters were taking a hit. There was people on council. I mean, if we want to talk about what really happened, and so people used their positions like this to say, well, let's put a curb to this instead of letting the market do it. And then the county said, well, we should do something too. And business operators like me get a $2,500 invoice to start the season. And I asked them, I said, can you tell me where this money's going to? I'm waiting on an answer. They're like, we haven't really decided what we're doing with that. So they get to charge me $2,500 just to operate. They don't come down. They came down, they tossed a pack of stickers to one of my guys and said, put this on all your vessels, take a picture of the hen and send it back to us. That pack of stickers is waiting for them to come put it down. They can come take the pictures. And it's just, to me, it's just the start of something that is very frustrating as a business. It's the reason I'm running for council, because you asked me, how do we help small business as a government? Just step out of their way a little bit. Don't make them jump through extra hoops. We don't have to go and do a whole lot for businesses. I believe in some regulations and standards, of course, but I think the easiest thing is just to say, let good operating businesses operate. So I hope that answers your question. To me, it's that foothold. It's the beginning of something that becomes something that's something greater that we don't want.
Mr. Mayor, when was, just out of curiosity, did the 2,500 start at 2,500 or was it something less to begin with?
So that's a per boat, per jet ski number. So
2,500 per?
No, that's the total for me. So that's I have 30 total vessels.
I got you.
So I have to pay them $2,500, and then you get into frustrations. You get into like you have to have a chase boat. Okay, so boat 8 is a great boat. I've got this one, that's got to be a designated standby boat. So then I have boat 7 get a tear in the seat, it's fine. I want to make that my chase boat. And I want to put boat 8 in the water as a rental. Well, now they've given me a sticker that says, this is your chase boat. It's a bunch of people that have no idea how that business operates is making the rules for it. And it's very frustrating. I have to call my insurance and move that stuff around, but now I have to call the city and I have to go get a new sticker and I have to change the chase boat to the other thing. And when you're running, I mean, you don't get a breath sometimes when we get, we have a pretty good season, but man, May, June, July, and August is when it hits. The last thing I want to do is jump through extra hoops. And what are they going to do? Are they going to come down and cite me? One, that would be frustrating because we're trying to run a business. Two, they're not. So they're just making us do it to do it. So
revenue.
Yeah,
revenue.
They're making money, and where's that? Again, crickets on where that money's going. So
Do they inspect your boats?
no, they just came down and dropped a packet of stickers off to one of my college kids and said, "Put these on the boat, take pictures, and send it to us."
Do you know if the county ordinance talks about regulating your boat? I mean, coming and doing inspections or
not that I know.
safety equipment or anything?
No, not as I know of right now. And I mean, there are good things, but I believe in good business practices. One of the people that I'm standing up for, one of the Fort Walton Beach liveries, is like, keep the wristbands on. That's good. It helps our Leos, fine. And I said, I agree. But then do it. It's a good business practice. We don't need someone to say, hey, you should do that. I don't need you to say, hey, fill up your boat past a quarter tank. What if somebody takes it out of bounds into the Gulf and floats away? I don't need you guys to be like, you should send out a full boat. You know what I mean? It's like, we're going to let's write an ordinance for that. And give me an hour, I'll give you 100 things that you should say, that's a good business practice. We should make that a law. I just let us operate. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak on this from the audience?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Count Normand. I run business 36 Myrtle Strip Parkway. It's like Mr. was it Frasetti mentioned earlier, there are dozens and dozens of illegal operators out there. Most people wouldn't know them if you don't know what to look for. Ben, other folks here, I can spot them all the way. The big thing is to have everybody conform is to catch them on the water. And you're not going to be able to do that here. Fort Walton or any municipality basically has no jurisdiction on the water. So I don't care if you even have a boat or whatever, I don't think you have the authority to do anything on the water. So you can say, oh, it's bad or whatever. The best way of catching them is being on land, but that's going to be a tough one too, because they're going to lie and say, oh yeah, I can just take my family out. And they're just going to putt around. They won't have the markings on the boat like you want everybody else like us to have. So they're just going to do what they do. There's a website called Get My Boat, where you can basically have a private boat, rent it on Get My Boat. Supposedly they cover insurance and some other things, but it's kind of gray area, legitimate. From what I heard, FWC doesn't care for their insurance program because it's not 100%, just like it would be for us that has a couple $1 million commercial liability. So it's easy to have a civilian person get a boat, rent it out, and put it back in the garage. So that's the people you need to catch if that's what your intention is for all of this. Putting extra regulations on us is not going to change anything, but just give us a hassle. And I won't give a number, but the high percentage of rules and regulations that we go by are from Florida statutes, and which is enforced through FWC and Coast Guard. And if you run a legit business, you don't want grief. So you got to run stuff by the law, carry proper insurance. You don't want your customers to get hurt. You don't need a crappy boat that's going to break down, because then you got to go out there and get this guy. You got a mad customer, you get bad reviews. So we do self-regulate, believe it or not. And it just makes our life easier, it makes our business grow. But you and partying, local stuff, parking, things like that, I can understand, because you don't want people parking on the side of 98 or whatever, blocking roads and things like that. But just don't go overboard on everything else that we're already doing per state statute, or just because it makes sense, good business sense, and just good common sense. That's all I have.
Thanks, sir.
Hi, my name is Luisa Garcia. I'm at 36 and 38 Miracle Strip Parkway. When we went to this meeting the last time, honestly, I think all of the water sport people that did show up enjoyed the meeting, because we felt that we were given an opportunity to at least make it a little bit better. Since then, I've had a lot to think about. And I go back to another city council meeting where I stated, why is the city involved in livery? It is a state regulated, it is Fish and Wildlife that used to do it. We don't want to be consistent with Destin. This is the city of Fort Walton, and prior to 2021, there wasn't a lot of issues. We haven't really had a bunch of incidents. I think that there was an incident that happened in Destin, may have been a Fort Walton boat, but I haven't seen injuries, so we try to be responsible, and we try to do things where safety comes first. If I can go back a couple of years, just so y'all know kind of what I've been dealing with, is at the beginning, and Christopher said he brought it up, is they were withholding BTRs from me. I have 144 slips. And the previous marshal, she's been doing a wonderful job, by the way. The previous fire marshal clearly would come and tell me, we're not going to give you any more BTRs. I would have water sport people calling me saying, hey, fire marshal is not going to give you any more BTRs until you get rid of, like, let's say, floating restaurants from Destin, right? That was holding back my commerce. So as a marina operator, and I just heard again another comment about, well, Ms. Garcia has her own rental and she can rent, but if anybody else comes and they have to go according to some other parking agreement, no sir, no sir. I am a commercial marina, whereas if you make if you're telling all of them that they have to meet that 1.5 requirement, then what you're saying is that I can still only rent half of my 144 slips. So if my land development code, because I own 2 marinas, the first one was from 2009, which was signed, I think, by, I don't know, Michael Beatty was there, you know, I can't remember. But I do remember with Chris, I have my flow over parking, right? And so then about the next marina, and it was the same situation. There's a recent legal matter that has recently come up to the city of Fort Walton, and I think all of y'all know what that is. And I was given that suit, that demand, and I read what LG Global Investments is part of the exhibit, and emails from other marinas making comments about all those parking across at the city from the pontoon people. It's none of their damn business down the street at that marina who's parking, if it's my people, if it's Crabshaw. It almost feels like a personal attack. So when you look at the land development code that I've been dealing with since 2009, I really think that the city has started making all these regulations to stop my commerce. My marina can rent to him, to him, to him, anyone here. And you should not impose this 1.5 that it only applies to me because I'm also doing water sports, but if somebody else comes, they have to meet the 1.5. And so aren't you in conflict with what I've been approved of since 2009? I mean, this is marina next door, Jamie Neighbors was part of that exhibit, complaining to the city about LG Global about, hey, there's a lot of parking over there from those pontoons. The whole city can see all this in the court records. What is it about me and my property that we have to impose all these regulations? So going back, Fish and Wildlife, DEP, Coast Guard, all those people regulate us. Now you want the city to regulate us too? It's not fair. I mean, what's going on here? Like, all these people just want to work, make a little bit of money, and take care of their families. And I feel like for some reason, we're sitting here attacking people that have the right to work. Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else wish to speak tonight on this topic?
I'd like to bring Mr. Garcia back up. I might have some questions for you. I just, I know the anxiety that this body in years past, I witnessed it 6 months ago, a year ago, I can't remember the financial burden that was placed on you and your business over there. It just, can you explain to us, I mean, do I understand correctly that this body in the years past facilitated a financial fine and penalty on you when you were not the submerged land lease owner? Do I understand correctly that the attorney at that time, who's not our lovely Miss and smart Miss Cobb, was a previous attorney, suggested that instead of giving the fine to the submerged land lease owner, they decided to give it to you on a daily penalty or fine? Is that correct?
So prior to COVID, when the governor shut it down, they were asking me to build a dock that wasn't mine, to spend my own money not knowing if DEP was going to give it to me. And I asked Bert, can you please table this until the end of this COVID or the governor opens it up? And I was denied that. So at the last meeting, Chris Versetti, who has been very helpful from the very beginning, I mean, it's been a learning process for all of us, but he did say in the last meeting that they knew that that submerged land lease was not mine and that I didn't own it. That didn't stop anybody from finding me or holding my $170,000 in escrow for almost 2 years.
Thank you, and that's what kind of just alerted me, and you mentioned what you felt like was a personal attack. I don't know what the purpose or intent of it is either. I keep looking at all of these things, trying to figure it out, and unfortunately, to me as well, it does seem that there's been some focus on you and your business operations that whether all of this turns out to be, it feels like it kind of comes back on you.
Yeah, when we keep talking about the parking, oh, we're gonna keep the parking the same, but what are you telling me now? Are you telling me that if you keep the parking the same, that some of these folks that are coming in are gonna go by this new ordinance of 1.5 to 1 slip when I'm actually 2 parking spots for 1 slip? Are you trying to hurt what? I've spent millions of dollars here. So I just want to know, and so I just want to put the city on notice that whatever happens with this parking thing, don't forget that since 2009, I have a signed land development order and everything else that says that the flow over can come over here. Mind you, when the city, I didn't want problems with the city, so when there's a parking problem, I resolved it. How? Not a boatyard during the summer. I might have 5 boats working on it, but I normally make a lot more money doing boatyard work than serving or paid to park over there. But I did that to facilitate the city because I've been getting attacked by the city for many years. So I said, you know what? I'm not going to do boatyard. I'm just going to concentrate on making money on, you know, all of my tenants. And so I'm trying to comply with what the city wants. I'm trying to comply with the parking situation. But I'm just here to say that if anything happens, revert clause, no revert clause, whatever, the city might create damage to me in that resolution. And if it does, then I'm just putting the city on notice. That if the property goes, I'm going to be damaged. So let's just, you know, I'm just trying to work with y'all. I really, but I don't think that all this regulation that you guys are putting on us is putting a stress. He might be, you know, leaving. You have lost so many businesses, and I'm going like, let Fish and Wildlife do it. They used to do it, and they did it fine, and we did it fine. And if something happened, they came to my dock and they said, we need this person, and we need that person. Last year, not a single city person came to our dock to check on those vessels. Now we want stickers? Before. You didn't come last year. No one came last year. And we had a lot of boats. So we are our own referees. We are our own policemen. We are, you know, hey, guess what? We just saw this, but we want to do what the city wants, but we just want, honestly, I wish that this would go away, and I think we should repeal the 2074 and go back to pre-2021 and let Fish and Wildlife, DEP, and all the waterway people. I thought I read something that says city waters. Those are not the city waters, those are state waters. So I'm here to do whatever the city likes, but I just think in the past, it's been unfair. And I've struggled financially, mentally. I have actually had business owners tell me that they've met with city councilmen. We're not going to let anybody park for Miss Garcia's parking lot. And I know who that person is. I'm not even going to look at you. But it's a disgrace. It's a disgrace that you go and tell other business owners, how are you going to keep people from my place parking at this municipality when I have a signature on my land development code? So let's all get along and just let all that go. I mean, how much time and effort have they spent here trying to regulate and regulate and regulate? I think it's just like, what, 4 years now? We don't want to be destined. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia.
No, thank you. Anyone else from the audience? Not council, it's back to you.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion that we keep 2074 in place and do not implement ordinance 2159.
Not hearing a second. Is there another?
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Been moved by Councilman Walker and seconded by Councilman Allegretto to keep ordinance 2079 and not to pursue ordinance 2159. Is that correct?
2074, yes, sir.
2074, keep.
Keep 2074, do not adopt 2159.
Got it. Further comments?
Sure. From the people I've heard from tonight, I think we received a number of emails today. That was their sentiment. I think that staff is welcome to continue to try to work with them to figure out if there's something. But I really like the idea of fish and wildlife and pre-2021, the way things were, getting out of their business. If there's a problem with parking in any zoning class, then address the zoning problems. If there are rogue riders, businesses operating outside of MX2, do what we've been doing, take them to task and operate from where we were.
All right, thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Yeah. Again, I appreciate the discussion, and I appreciate everyone being here tonight to continue this discussion. I'm personally feeling like this discussion has happened too many times, but I do understand wanting to make things better. And I do trust Mr. Frasetti when he says the whole purposes of what we're doing tonight with this new ordinance is to make 2174 better. I just would like to see it done in a way that refines or changes ordinance 2174 and not piles on a new ordinance 2159 that contains things that frankly these people have outlined as troublesome, bothersome, overregulation, unenforceable situations. You know, I can't imagine having to call the city or the county every time I have to change a sticker on a boat to match a VIN number when I've had something happen in the middle of my busiest time of business because I'm worried about trying to do the right thing, whereas as outlined by us and by Chief Beige and by Mr. Frasetti and by these gentlemen and ladies, that, you know, we've got people out there that we as a city can't regulate. We can't do really anything about it. We're trying to put the right things in place. Our code officers are trying, our police officers are trying to make sure that these rogue operators aren't operating. But I don't think placing more restrictions on the people that are doing it right is going to help solve that situation. I really want to continue to try to solve that situation. I just don't think this does it. So I'm not going to support the motion at this time. Or actually, I'm sorry, I am going to support the motion at this time. It feels weird to be on your side. So it's got me all
way over there.
It's got me all discombobulated. I almost started saying things with a southern accent for a while. I was very confused. Sorry. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Smith.
I'm not going to support the motion, but I have a couple of things. I guess my understanding is that this updated ordinance is going to make the process easier for the livery vessels and for staff. One of the big concerns that I remember in having a conversation with a lot of the livery vessels, every time we come in here and we ask, hey, how many of them do we have compliant with our code right now? I think the first time I asked it was 1. I think the second time I asked it was like 4 or 5. And one of the big things was the lack of communication between the two parties. I think that this clears up a lot of that communication and lays out a timeline and a process that I think is more black and white for both parties. So I think it helps in that sense. I also think it helps with the quote-unquote rogue operators with this definition of these bareboat charters. If I'm understanding the reason that we did that, Ms. Kopp, was, you know, right now, you know, if we go out after what we believe is a rogue operator, they can kind of hide under that bareboat moniker. But with us having a definition in there, if they don't adhere to that definition, then they are in violation. So I believe that that's going to help us identify more rogue operators and be able to hold them accountable. I think that a lot of the things that are already in here, I guess my understanding is not going to affect the current livery vessel operators. And so I'm okay with that. The one thing I would be more than happy to concede on are the stickers. If we got to get rid of the stickers, let's get rid of the stickers. Because if it's, you know, like you said, if hey, what do I got to do on this boat? Pull this sticker off, put this sticker on. I think that the sticker idea, from my understanding, and talking to some previous livery operators is it's an easier identification to, hey, who may be your violators and who may not be your violators. So if the stickers are a problem and having, you know, figuring out what boat we can use, what boat we can't use, if an engine's down, if something's torn on it, we got to get rid of the stickers, I'm okay with getting rid of the stickers, so you guys can continue to do business. I think for the rest of this, I wouldn't be willing to go back to square one before this ordinance was in place, because while he may not have had any conversations with people or complaints, I've had quite a few complaints. Most of my complaints have come from the land development code side. So I have no problem that if this motion fails and the next motion that I would make to pass 2159 would pass, to sit down and have a conversation. If you want to go back to the beginning and we can maybe, probably for my aspect, address a lot of those land development code issues, I would be willing to look at that. It's not a hard no for me. But I think from a quality of life standpoint, from the residents and the phone calls that I have gotten, most of that has been land development code related, and there has to be something there. I'm not willing to go back to the beginning where there's absolutely no regulation at all. I do agree that overregulation is a problem. Some regulation is probably not an issue. If you have good operators, your good operators are probably going to be adhering to, so I guess what we would say common sense regulation, but we got to figure out what that is between the two of us. And we already have an existing ordinance, so that's not going away. So again, I'm not going to support it because I believe that this updated ordinance is going to help clarify some things between staff and between the owners. I think the other great thing in here, big complaint is, hey, if a marina's already got a submerged land lease, why do we have to provide a submerged land lease? That's actually pulled out of here. So if you're doing business at a marina, you as a livery business don't have to give that submerged land lease. So I think that there are some good things in here, but I'm not going to support it for that reasons. I would make a motion after this to approve these updates because I think it's going to maybe make some more things black and white, but with the caveat that we kind of pull the stickers out, because that's kind of what I've heard here tonight, is that the stickers initially could be causing an issue, with also being willing to sit down and have that further conversation about, hey, if we scaled back, what will we scale back to, and how will we solve these land development code issues that I get phone calls, it seems like, weekly from March to almost October. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Thank you, sir. Other comments from council? Mr. Beasley.
Mr. Merrill, you did get my vote earlier today, but I can't support what you've requested for today. I won't support the current motion. I believe that we need a set of rules in place. I believe we need a system in place. We have something in place now, but it's my understanding, speaking with our attorney, speaking with staff, and what staff has met with the community, that this is a better, more refined ordinance than what we had before. So if we move forward with the proposed motion, I don't think it's a step back in regulation. I think it's keeping us in a worse state than if we approve the proposed regulation. And that's my opinion. I am a small business, and I've been hit with regulations from the last fallout, and seemingly overwhelming regulations. But what it did for us was made us refine our system and work through it. And candidly, our competition, a lot of it went away because we worked within the system. And I believe what we have here are professional businesses, lifelong marine businesses. So I believe that if we have something that can be relied upon by those, and the staff has rules that they have to operate under, instead of a checklist that may get completed after we get the BTR out. I think that's a better system in place. And so it's my understanding that this won't stop growth, it won't stop businesses, but it will give businesses something that they can rely on. And there's always unintended consequences from rules, and I don't like those unintended consequences, but it is my belief that this will lead to better consequences than what we currently have on the books today. So although I appreciate what everybody said, and I did listen to what everybody said, I don't believe we're adding any new parking regulations. I don't believe we're adding any new areas that you can or cannot operate in. I believe we're sticking in the same locations. I believe we're still allowing the same number of operators. I'm getting a head nod. I do believe that if a boat goes down, that there's going to be a system in place that we can immediately move a chase boat to a rental boat or a temporary boat or back and forth. I don't think it's going to take a month to obtain such an approval. So I am willing to bend if we need to bend, and I don't mean bend like in a negative way. If there's an adjustment we can make, I'm happy to make it. But I do believe that the current ordinance will give a better system that we can rely on. And so I will not support the current motion. And if there's another one, I'll support the current motion.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Mr. Jeter?
I will not support the current motion as well, much to the like of what everyone else has already said. We need regulation. A lot of us up here own small businesses. No one likes any extra regulation. But in times like this, we do need to coincide with our neighbors. It reminds me similar to the vagrant situation. We make something, they go to Marietta. Marietta makes something, they go to here. We all need to be on the same page, the same playing field. The fact that we're not charging anybody, we're not limiting who all else can open or the number. I think staff, Chris, Tim, you guys have done a great job. And I'm with what Councilman Allegretto said earlier. I go back to 2 years ago, one of our very first meetings, it was the airplane operation. And, you know, we had someone in here crying with his family and his daughter because we kind of jumped the gun and maybe did some things that we shouldn't have done. We didn't do that here. We stopped. We waited. We waited a year and a half. We've listened. We've listened tonight. And, you know, Mr. Mayor, I look forward to you being up here, hearing some more of your small business, you know, wisdom, hopefully, in the future, because it doesn't fall on deaf ears. So I agree with what you're saying. I'm kind of with Councilman Smith. If we can go back between, this is only the first reading, we have a second reading. If the next motion has some slight tweaks in it, I'll be at the stickers and other stuff. We got to find a way to meet in the middle. And at the end of the day, years ago, this was started because of the rogue operators, the bare bones charters. That's what we're all trying to eliminate here. And we can make as many ordinances as we want, like we've all said. That's all about, and Chief Page isn't in here, but our favorite word is enforcement. Whether it's code that enforces it or the police department, it's got to be enforced, whatever the ordinance says. But based on a year ago when 2 out of 30 people in the room were compliant with their BTR because they didn't know, like Councilman Meade said, no one knew the rules. No one knew what is the process to get the BTR. So 2 people had it, X amount of people didn't have it. And like Chris said, we had a spreadsheet just keeping track of when they get it. There's no, this sets the playing field, makes it fair for everybody. Doesn't make it unfair for anybody or go after one specific person. It makes it fair. And at the end of the day, we've still got to enforce it. So I'm not going to support the current motion.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Mr. Schmidt? Mr. Watt?
I'd like to come back. A great conversation, guys. Thank you for sharing all of that. That was helpful. I love the small business, and I know I could ask any of you small business owners up here, if you were about to have half of your business taken away, how would you feel about it? Well, that's the position, Ms. Garcia, thanks to the 6.02 related to the parking. And as I was reading through this and trying to figure out what might be the other intents of these things, I said parking appears to be the target. Parking. So the marina, whereas I believe 7024, 2074 didn't give staff what they wanted or ability to go and deal with what they call as the problem over there with parking. I believe 2159 might be that instrument to help them achieve what they finally want, which is taking half of her business away. So when I said I felt it was personal, I still feel that it's personal. None of us may ever know But I have to bring up on this that I spent so much time reading all of these, going back to the state stuff, the predecessors, and this because of one, we were all a part of it. And I know I hung my head in shame, but when I found out that a ordinance was being proposed to be updated, I think they called it updated, freshened up because of the food truck growth of business, and we need to regulate them, and we need to. The state had taken away the right of the city to regulate mobile food trucks. So they lost a business tax on that, which is a revenue source. And then, so it was turned over to the state. And then through reading every line of that food truck ordinance, I discovered that they were the ordinance was going to allow the city to re-regulate based on that food truck becoming from mobile to stationary when it plugged in an electrical outlet. And that was going to allow the city to regulate them. So I don't know where it's buried in this, but I just don't trust that what's here is going to be long-term beneficial for the businesses. I know you can agree or disagree with me. The votes are going to be had, but if it happens the way it's written right now, her business is going to be cut in half. From 140 to 70 spots she's going to be able to rent out based on, and if not,
No,
please help me.
I will jump in.
Please
because
help me.
There's nothing about parking in this ordinance at all. This ordinance has nothing to do with parking, and it's certainly not directed at anyone. And it's a citywide ordinance, so that's not the case here. The existing ordinances that are not on the table tonight have parking, and we talked about it being in Chapter 6, not 5 of the LDC. So it's not on the table tonight. This creates a permitting process because BTRs are supposed to be a non-regulatory tax imposed and allowed. We are allowed to charge it under state law. Staff has, and this is what Chris was trying to explain when he said putting a square peg into a round hole. Their staff is somehow trying to use BTRs as a regulatory tool, and it's really not appropriate. It's not, it makes it easier, I would think, for, and I'm not talking about the existing ordinances, but for the existing livery owners and for new people coming in, having this ordinance in place shows them what they need to submit, as opposed to, well, submit for your non-regulatory BTR and we'll tell you later what you need. So I think that's what Chris was saying, and so it's up to council, but I think for staff, and we thought that the stakeholders were on board because we had lots of meetings and that was our impression. I'm actually a little bit surprised, but if the stickers are the issue, or whatever the issue is, it seems that council's willing to fix that, but there is nothing to do with parking in this ordinance.
Well, thank you. When I asked Chris about parking, and it does appear that this would be the operation, while there might not be anything in this about parking, the application process for a new business, they come in here, she's operating a marina, a new livery business comes down here from Georgia or North Alabama. Thank you, Nick, for that shout.
You're welcome.
Comes down from North Alabama, and they apply over here at her marina to rent one of her slips. The parking that would be applied to them and determining how many boats they can have, it will go off of 1.5 parking spots per slip or per boat, I believe it was, as opposed to the marina operation, letting them operate under the marina parking, which is 1 per 2 slips.
But none of that is in this ordinance. If you want to talk about parking regulations, those are different provisions of the code. That is not in this ordinance. And further, the parking issues, first of all, we have active litigation, so I'm not going to get into them. And second of all, I believe that staff has been working with existing property owners and not trying to put anybody out of business, as far as I know, and I haven't heard to the contrary, so I'm going to assume that that's happening right now.
Right, so I'm still not clear on how I know it's not addressed in here, but it will be addressed
You
under.
already have parking regulations in your code. If you want to change the parking regulations, you would want to direct staff to create a different ordinance, and you would have to get council support for that. But tonight, this is just setting up a permitting process so that staff isn't using a non-regulatory tax to try to keep track of the businesses. So, I mean, I don't know. Obviously, we've heard objections from some of the stakeholders, but I would think that knowing what you have to submit would be helpful. So I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cox.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Smith? Mr. Smith?
I just want to clarify this. The parking is related to the prior ordinance, which is already in place and in effect, which has nothing to do with this ordinance. So we are changing nothing with the parking, absolutely nothing. Nobody's going to lose half their boats overnight. The parking code that exists has existed since 2021. So that is not happening and is not part of this. So nobody will be losing half of their boats if we pass this ordinance tonight.
Well, thank you for that. I know that we do reflect back on video, so I know that Ms. Garcia will hold us accountable to it not impacting your business ability to rent your slips to livery business people. That's what I know she will hold us accountable to. So thank you for airing all of that. Thank you.
Any other comments from council? Council, please vote. And the noes pass 4-2. Thank you, council.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to adopt ordinance 2159, excluding the requirement for the stickers.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilman Smith, seconded by Councilman Elefant to approve ordinance 2159 as written, excluding the section on stickers. Is that correct? Correct. Further comments?
Real quick, again, you guys, we want to sit back and talk about going back to the beginning. I'm willing to have that conversation. I have a lot of concerns as it relates to the land development code, but if y'all want to have that conversation and we can sit down and hash something out that I think makes sense for the residents and for you guys, I'm willing to do it. I know I'm going to put staff through the ringer again, but the thing about me is I'm willing to listen to anything and I'm willing to talk about anything. And I appreciate you guys being in Fort Walton and doing business. I understand it's not easy to do business anywhere, but we're trying to be as business friendly as we can to you guys with also keeping our residents in mind. That's kind of where my mindset's coming from. So again, if we leave out of here, you guys want to have that conversation, more than willing to have it and see what we can put together.
Further comments from council?
Just that, I'm for the clarification of the whole thing. And like I said before, I do trust Mr. Frasetti that that's what this does. It makes it easier on him. It makes it easier on existing and future businesses. And when we remove the sticker requirement from it, it seems to me that's the most clunky thing that was involved in this. So I do appreciate you removing that to make that motion, and that's why I'll support it.
Mr. Mead?
And if you meet with Mr. Smith, obviously I can't meet with you for sunshine law reasons, but I am open to modifications between this and the next reading. So if there's something that needs to be tweaked, of course, but I will support the motion and continuing to be open to discussing it as well.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? Council, please vote. And it does pass 5-1. Thank you, council. Let's move on to item 9.2.
Mayor, you had asked me to let you know if we got notification from the supervisor of the West.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Let's, are you ready to read the results?
I have.
All right, we're going to take a break here to let Ms. Barnes read the results of the election.
These are the unofficial results, so they may be tweaked when the totals are completed. There'll be an alphabetical order as they were on the ballot. Brandon Bishop, 409. Logan Browning, 748. Sonia Vasquez, 311. Jason Harwell, 287. Ben Merrill, 640. Deborah Riley, 808. Travis Smith, 541. The total cast votes were 3,744, and there was like an 8.7% turnout.
All right, so For those that didn't write down all the numbers, our 3 new council people.
So it appears to be Logan Browning, Ben Merrill, and Deborah Riley.
All right. And those will become official when?
We'll have another meeting, the canvassing board will have another meeting Friday morning at 10. So it should be finalized then.
Thank you very much. Those are the unofficial results, but more than likely will be the official results. So, all right, thank you. All right, now let's go on to item 9.2, 2176, ordinance to rezone 120 Lowry Place Southeast from CF to MX2. Ms. Cox.
This is ordinance 2176, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Fort Walton Beach, Florida, providing for authority, providing for findings of fact, providing for property described as 120 Lowry Place Southeast, more particularly described in the body of the ordinance, to be rezoned MX2 mixed-use high zoning district, providing for the amendment of the affected portion of the official zoning map, providing for severability, and providing an effective date. This is first reading.
Thank you. Mr. Paccetti.
Yes, thank you. So this is a rezoning request for property near downtown, referred to as 120 Lowry Place, the old school board property, you may know it as. So this was an application that we received a couple of months ago and went into our review process and is coming through asking to rezone it from CF Community Facilities, as it was the old school board property, to an MX2 mixed-use high zone property. And so kind of to provide a brief background in it, when it went into staff review, took a little bit extra time because we, during our review, actually found some discrepancies with the boundaries in the survey that were provided, that our team of Public Works and our JS division kind of looked through and worked through, and we met with the applicant and kind of spoke about and realized that there were some small errors, actually, just an old property down there that had some differences between right-of-ways and property boundaries, but nothing that can't be addressed and nothing that's going to hold up this process right now. So work through this process. This property, it has multiple addresses, including 107 and 109 First Street Southeast, 120 Lowry Place Southeast, and 108 and 110 2nd Street Southeast. It contains 3 parcels, and it's approximately 7.5 acres in size. The future land use was already actually a mixed-use future land use, so this rezoning request would be consistent, compatible with the existing future land use that exists on the property. And so staff did complete our analysis of the request, and staff does find that it's consistent with the future land use, as I mentioned. We do find that it is compatible with the surrounding zoning districts. That area there, I said, it is right in our downtown area, and it has a lot of mixed-use properties. We also find that it's not substantially more or less intense than the allowable development on adjacent parcels, and that the requested use is based on soil types, topography, and protection of natural resources and designated historical areas. Basically, any future development on there would go through our development review process, and we'd identify any of those special conditions during that time. And finally, I did note the statute nowadays does require a business impact estimate for many different types of ordinances. However, a rezoning is not one of those that's required for that. So this did go to the LPA at the last LPA hearing, and they did recommend approval of it. So with that, staff does respectfully recommend the City Council's adoption of ordinance number 2176 to rezone properties addressed at 107 and 109 First Street Southeast, 120 Lowry Place Southeast, and 108 and 110 2nd Street Southeast from community facilities CF to mixed-use high MX2 zoning district. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Questions from council or Mr. Paccetti? Mr. Alvarado?
Any reason not to do it?
Staff, we don't have any problem with it. We don't see any problem not to do it. It's good. It's a good consistent use. The mixed use, the future land use was already mixed use, kind of foreshadowing this type of change.
Cool. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Walker?
Yeah, and I think it might have been in 4, or was there an MX3 up for?
Yes,
is it a part of this?
On here.
Is it
future? Next.
What I'm looking at 3. I'm sorry.
It's like it's a.
Ordinance is second reading. Yes. That's right. I knew I'd seen. I thought you were saying it here. Just out of curiosity, why would he apply only for MX2? Because MX3 would it? it allow him to conduct every business that's in 2 and then have the higher density in 3 as well?
Well, as proposed, a couple things on MX3 would restrict certain uses. I don't know what their proposals, their plans are there. We've also made some changes right now to lower the density in MX3 that you'll see coming up. But then lastly, with the proposed downtown master plan, this was actually outside of that boundary that they were proposing, not the MX3 for. So this is an area that in the kind of long-term vision would be an MX2 property as it transitions to lower uses further.
And that's what I was hoping to see tonight, and I didn't see it there. As last time he presented that map, and I know that one of the PD&E, one of them, I don't think it's the preferred method or preferred route, actually shows it going up north, up to maybe all the way up to the block and coming back down and, coming into this space as well. And that's why I was looking for a map on that MX3. What is it going to look like?
Sure. I apologize that, I didn't have that. I did review the 2 alternatives that are currently going through the PD&E, looking at it compared to the site to see impacts there. It shows a very small corner of the property on the southeast corner of this property, possibly being touched by the right-of-way acquisition for around the mound. I estimated the square footage of it, just looking at the GIS, of a couple thousand square feet. I mean, it was less than it was about 0.1% of this property would be touched potentially.
So neither one of the routes would
either one of those routes were almost the identical overlay actually at this property. And when I looked at it, this property's about 330,000 square feet, and I was getting somewhere 4,000 or 5,000 square feet maybe being touched at the very southeast corner of it. So pretty small.
Thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Presiding and Council? Anyone from the public wish to speak on this? Seeing none, Council, can I get a motion?
Move to rezone, or move forward ordinance 2176 to rezone 120 Lowry Place Southeast from CF to MX2.
Second.
I think Mr. Jeter. Been moved by Councilman Allegretto, seconded by Councilman Jeter, to approve 2176, an ordinance to rezone 120 Lowry Place Southeast from CF to MX2. Further comments?
Just appreciate Mr. Lee sticking with us for the meeting tonight. Being in attendance, thank you, sir.
Mr. Jeter?
I look forward to a beautiful mixed-use development down there.
Anyone else?
The same, excited to see something positive happen to the property. Thank you.
Same, ditto.
Council, please vote. Does pass 6-0. Thank you, Council. Brings us to item 9.3, 2177, ordinance amending land development code, chapter 4, development standards.
Did we bump that,
Oh, we
man?
did, we bumped that.
That one there, thank you.
Forgive me, I got a big note here, says postponed. Item 10, ordinance second reading, 10.1, 2149, an ordinance amending land development code, chapter 2, 4, 5, and 6 for the creation of MX3 zoning district. Ms. Cobb.
Ordinance 2149, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Fort Walton Beach, Florida, amending chapters 2, 4, 5, and 6 of the Land Development Code to establish standards for MX3 mixed-use downtown high-intensity zoning district, providing for authority, providing for severability, and providing an effective date. This is the second reading.
Thank you. Mr. Presetti, it's like to see you again.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, for the last time, hopefully this evening, right? So following the last meeting, there was some great discussion in there regarding looking at the densities and looking at the around the mound potential impacts, value of the property. I did some research into it. As Councilman Walker said, I know some others said as well. There's questions on whether if it has a higher density, what type of property valuations and increases we're potentially looking at. In my research found maybe not a set number because every property is unique, but certainly indications would have definitely seemed to imply that there would be a property increased valuation. I saw some numbers looking at it, based on a few percentage per dwelling unit, additional dwelling unit. Looking at the value of the property, that you're talking, maybe a couple percent increase per additional dwelling unit when you're looking at properties. But all in all, I think it's probably safe to say yes, the property, any property with a higher intensity allowed would have a higher valuation, in that area. So kind of looking through there, we went back through the existing ordinance, and what I've done in the backup in the strike-through underlying ordinance I highlighted in green the changes that I made from the last meeting. So the yellow was what was previously existing proposed, and then I went ahead and what specifically like the tables for the development standards. I know Councilor Smith mentioned, and we talked some. What I went through here, and I've highlighted in three places in tables 4.2.01, in 4.05.04, and 4.10.05. Basically, those were the three areas that had the higher density numbers proposed for MX3 currently, and I changed them just to match MX2. So, well, what in effect, if this would be approved, is this would implement all the framework for MX3. It would put all of the allowable uses that we're talking about limiting potentially for MX3, you know, some of the car washes and some of those other uses down there, but it would keep the density the same as MX2 is today. So that way, you know, the framework's in there. If we wanted to start a city, you know, if this was approved and we wanted to go with a city-initiated process for those specific parcels, then we could identify which parcels specifically we're talking about downtown, and that could be a process that we bring back through that would, you know, set kind of the stage for it, put all of the allowable uses in place on those properties, you know, kind of sooner than later, but not potentially negatively impact on the density side and all until we're ready at some future date. So really, the only changes, like I said, I did make were just those three tables that I've highlighted in green here. There is a table for our bonus points here that has various points in there. I reviewed that. I actually didn't make any changes to it because ultimately the bonus scorecard that's highlighted in green below it is what affects the actual density increases you're going to get, and the points were everything that was the changes in there were all consistent and good for that area downtown. So we just, like I said, removed the down the density numbers and made it match MX2 for now. So with that, staff does respectfully recommend the approval of ordinance number 2149. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions, Mr. Smith?
Did I hear that correct, that if this passes, there's gonna be a delayed implementation of it?
So if it passes, this would all be implemented now, but what the conversation, the request was from last time was not to implement the higher density numbers, the higher dwelling units like per acre, until around the mound, the PD&E is done, with the worry that if properties are rezoned MX3 and suddenly allowed to have more units on those properties, then the value may go up, which may hurt our chances with around the mound and FDOT doing property acquisitions. So kind of where discussion went to was I think the council generally liked the allowable uses in MX3, but said, hey, let's hold off on the density for now. But what we could do, also that ultimately up to the council, is if this is approved, we could do a city-initiated rezoning request on those properties that locks in all of these allowable land uses now. It would make them MX3 as this is proposed. It just, the density as proposed is the same as MX2, so that wouldn't change.
Yeah,
And then,
I would say that if you mess with the density, it's, just sitting on the TPO, I can tell you right now and talking to them, the holdup with our whole project is the $250+ million worth of land acquisition. And there's different buckets of money. Building the road is cheap. It's $40 to $70 million. That we can do that right now. But the land acquisition of being $250 million for just this one project, you know, they're saying it's feasible, but you're not going to get that money in 1 year. They're going to phase it over 5 or 6 years. So, you know, you go and you let the density go up, and now you went from, all right, now we're at 250 million, now we just went to 400 million. Your project's not going to happen.
exactly.
It's just not.
Yes. So, yep, that's kind of where that discussion I think came from. That's why we took those numbers down for now, so it wouldn't make any changes to what we have today.
Yeah, because that would torpedo that whole program real quick.
Yes. Yeah, we definitely don't want to do anything to jeopardize that, so.
Mr. Mead?
Number one, I get concerned about interfering with property rights based on how we want to evaluate their land. That I'm not suggesting it's wrong, but I have had some internal concerns. And I think if we are discussing values, which we clearly are, if you move the downtown to an MX3, which would allow for higher density, that would make it less desirable for the state to blow through downtown. Because that's the cheapest thing for them to do, is just tear our downtown, just tear right through it. They keep Highway 98 moving, and they don't have to do any overpasses, they don't have to do anything. They just blow right through it, take out north or south buildings, and they're gone. That's the easiest thing they can do. The harder thing they can do is this around the mound, where they've given us pretty pictures and pretty designs and flowed traffic and these 12-foot pedestrian corridors and stuff. So if we do move to the valuations, I would think that the higher valuations in that in our downtown corridor would make it more appealing to go around, as opposed to just like a bad analogy, but just, you know, mowing down our structures there in the Highway 98 and just going through it. So I'm not sure that that conditionally passing but holding back, I'm not sure that that would be the answer, even if we were to take the valuation approach. My position would be either we allow MX3 or we don't. And I think that we've had design that said that it was or plans that said it was a good approach there, so I'm fine with it. But yeah.
Thank you, sir.
So,
Mr. Jeter.
just comprehend what you're saying. You're saying keep the density higher at MX3, but as Chris is saying, designate south of what we plan for around the mountain to be MX3, which then in turn forces the state's hand to do around the mountain because that's cheaper than, is that what you're insinuating?
Well, no, I mean, I don't like zoning and land use based on values and what it may do to the state in the future. I get uncomfortable with that, but I believe the original request was for essentially south of the around the mountain to move to a lot of that to move to MX3. Is that correct?
From First Street to Merkle Strip Parkway, Perry to Gulfview.
Sure. So basically, it would be south of there. Our plan before this conversation was to keep that south of where the around the mound was essentially going.
Right, so I'm just adding on to that. Let's say hypothetically we proceed with this MX3 but keeping MX2 zoning, and as we get closer and we actually see that final design per se, then we could immediately within a meeting or two implement those MX3 higher density, which then keemal around the mountain. That makes sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have a good answer.
Mr. Walker?
So MX3 is not an existing zoning, and kind of to your point of property rights too, because it's not like we're taking what's already existing and reducing it. It's something that's new that's coming along, and I can appreciate your, hey, if it's going to force them to go around the mountain, why don't we make that little space down there right by the bridge, MX6, where they can have 600 units an acre, you know, really force them to go around kind of stuff. So I was thinking, and I think, well, it was the consensus of the council last time, that give MX2 to let them start implementing, give them the MX3 framework to go around it, and keep the density at MX2 levels, which is still 100? 60, was it 60 units, but with some bonus points, they could get up to close to 100?
It is not quite that.
And now we're talking 150.
It's 45, at 45 units at bonus density.
At the bonus density.
Yes,
They could get 45 an acre was the max. Yes. And now with MX3, if it were to be come in and implemented with the new MX3 density, it would be up to 150.
Yes, sir.
So 2.5 times, almost 3 times the existing, you know, and that does get costly. And I think the consensus was that I didn't see it coming either. It was like, hey, if this causes a problem for the state to acquire that property, we don't want to do that because we want around the mountain. Yeah. The PD&E is due out when? September?
Later, probably in the year.
August, September, they're going to have to sign off on by November.
And then so what you were talking about, and we were all talking about, is that once the PD&E, when the PD&E comes out, do they say, here's where we're going?
It should have that. alternate?
They've not been considering that, have they? I mean, as far as, I went out to I think we all went out there was nothing going downtown. I mean, there was nothing going through downtown. Now, it doesn't mean they could have been pulling a head fake, but there was nothing going through.
No, I'm not suggesting it is an option, but what I'm suggesting is that if we frustrate the entire process, just with the bridge, I mean, if we hadn't have given them a consensus, then they would have just come to the bridge there without our input, or not, and shut it down to commercial traffic. So that's just, one of my internal fears is
that they come through downtown. Is
Yeah.
that what I understand?
Yeah, but I don't want to pass regulation to keep them from coming downtown. That's not what I'm suggesting. I'm just suggesting that if we're going to give them an MX3, let's give them an MX3. But
But we dealt with that last time, and one of the concerns that the council had consensus on was that for traffic. If we implement 3, we don't know where they're going, and they keep it coming through downtown. We've given MX3 150 units an acre versus 45, and what the master plan has said time and time again, traffic is the #1 issue. So we kind of had to re-scramble the egg of sorts. I mean, I still like the framework. MX3 lets you guys do what you need to do. PD&E come out. We can see that it's not going to be cost prohibitive, and everybody that's in this space, they say, hey, we're going around. That's going to be a traffic solution. Let's give them the higher density then. I mean, when it comes back to council, theoretically, it doesn't have to get approved at 150. I mean, we could change it to 130 if we wanted to, 120 depending on it. I just think that the PD&E was, I was wanting to see the PD&E before we allowed any increased density. It just made sense to me, traffic-wise and money-wise.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I thought you were wrapping it up there. I was really waiting for Mr. Smith to come back because you weren't at the last meeting, because I wanted to hear that exact kind of opinion right there before we move forward with it. Hearing that it comes out in November-ish, that we'd get that back, I think it would be wise just to wait rather than saying, hey, let's jump into this and change it. I mean, the MX3 situation, as we've talked about in the past, I think we approved unanimously before as an idea. And then now we're at this point where we're trying to mess with it a whole lot. So in your discussions with business owners, I ask you this every time, but it's something that there is interest in, correct?
We've received interest, in one property over down there.
And as you said at the last meeting, there's not a project on the table at the moment that's awaiting this and its approval, so they can say, all right, well, now we can finally build our grand hotel. Cool. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Other comments? Anyone from the public wish to comment on this? Council back to us for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, make the motion we adopt ordinance 2149, amending the land development code with MX2 zoning densities applied, which is what staff recommends.
Okay. All right, been moved by Mr. Walker, second by Mr. Mead, that we adopt 2149, amending land development code, chapters 2, 4, 5, and 6, with the creation of MX3 with the keeping of MX2 densities. Further comment? Comments? Council, please vote. Does pass 6-0. Thank you, Council. And that'll bring us to item 11, City Manager reports.
Mayor, thank you. Just a couple of quick ones. Obviously, we continue to work forward on your #1 directives, which are the multi-use fields over at the expansion of Jet Recreational Center there. Charles mentioned it, definitely on our radar, and we are working on it as it just takes a little, as you guys, it takes time to get those invitations to bid out and kind of begin to make that happen, and like I said, move some dirt around and get things going on that particular project. Just a couple of meeting announcements. We have an executive session on March 25th that we'll all be there. It should be really quickly. I think Mr. Burns said we'd be kind of in and out of that. On that meeting as well, that will be when we recognize each one of you that have served the city. And we want to thank you for that, but it'll be early on in the meeting. I think Ms. Barnes has that placed pretty early so that we will kind of thank you for your service. And then I think we kind of get into where we got quite a few things on that meeting agenda. So that could be a little bit of a lengthy meeting. So April 1st will be the swearing in, which looks like we're going to have some new council members. Looking forward to that. We will have Judge Mason here to swear in with us. That's at 5 o'clock. If I didn't mention it, obviously our meeting will begin at 6 o'clock, regular March 25th. But again, April 1st will be a special meeting at 5 o'clock. I do have a little bit of information. I will make one more announcement about the council candidates. Right now, we are working with the search firm about trying to get those applications or those resumes to you sooner, so you'll have a little bit more time to vet and contact those people before they're not slated to come and visit until April the 16th. But we'll need your help quickly in narrowing that list from between 13 and 10 to 13. We're not sure exactly what they're going to give us as far as eligible candidates, as far as the backgrounds finish up, but that will be coming soon to you, so you have more time to kind of vet those people on your own before you help us shortlist that to the 5 that we're going to need to actually bring here and have the visit with y'all. So that's about all I have there.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Ms. Collins.
Just one thing for council. Just wanted to let you know that you've probably noticed Jeff Burns and I have been kind of splitting up the meetings a little more, each taking one a month. If you're all okay with that, we'll probably continue that in March and April. We're both equally involved in all of the city business, but if anyone has any questions or concerns about that, let me know. Otherwise, Jeff will be here on the 25th. We'll both be here for the swearing in on the 1st, and then I'll be here the first meeting in April.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, Mayor, council comments, and we're going to start with you, Mr. Meade.
No offense to you, Ms. Cotton, but we enjoy having Mr. Burns as well. So, it's actually a nice combination, so thank you.
Thank you, and we work together, so.
Thank you. Good conversation tonight. The zoning to everything else. Nothing further. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Schmidt.
I'm good, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Smith.
Yeah, during an election cycle, it's quite interesting the amount of rumors that you hear. And I actually had someone call me last week and kind of give me the business about the city. I don't know if it was me specifically or if it was just the city trying to kick bow legs out of the city. Sorry, unfortunately that's not the truth, so you're going to have to go deal with the pirates when you're mayor. So I guess I have a question, because the conversation led into our support for the landing and the fireworks and stuff like that. And I don't know if anybody else up on this board has told staff that we weren't doing what we normally have budgeted for or what we normally agree to. And, the numbers that I kind of saw in this email that they sent around were kind of a joke. It was $5,000. So I'm curious at who made that decision, because they're under the impression that the city's leaving them hanging, and I don't ever recall anybody up here, any of us 8, ever having that conversation or having the discussion that we were going to cut that or anything like that. So I just want to get some clarification on that of who picked up the phone and called them and told them that. Because I don't think it's anything that I've heard, and I don't know that it's anything that I've heard any of these other eight around us seen. And if it's going to be something that, that I would imagine that gets cut, that's, kind of for public consumption, that would be something that probably maybe would get run through this council before a decision gets made to saying, hey, we're not doing this, you guys are on your own. So.
Tiff, you want to address that?
Sure,
yeah.
Well, while she's coming up, I'm in the mood. I've never heard any conversation of any of that. The only conversation I've heard is about the lease on the building.
I'll show you an email.
Yeah, so we didn't have anything budgeted this year for fireworks. We usually contribute, last year we contributed 2,000, Bowlegs contributed 5,000, so we had a $7,000 show. So we didn't have anything budgeted this year for
So
that.
we didn't have anything budgeted this year. I guess why would they be under the assumption that we were paying $5,000 for fireworks? Is that?
We've never paid $5,000 for fireworks. They've paid, the William Augustus Bowles Foundation has paid $5,000, and we've contributed just to make it a bigger show in previous years.
I guess I'm just baffled at where they could, if it's not something that we normally do.
Everything that goes on in a campaign, Travis, is not always accurate. So
No,
what you hear, I mean,
I get that, but like for me, in my own right, like I could give two craps about the Pirates, but that's something that's been going on 70 years in our city, and I believe that our residents do enjoy it. And if we are normally covering something and now they're saying that we're not covering, that's something I want to get to the bottom of. And so what I'm hearing you say is there was never any expectation from us to them that we were paying for any fireworks this year.
Well, we have done it in the past, so there is an expectation that we would continue. We were not sure with the 3% cap if we would be able to. It will raise the budget because we have done it in the past, but it's not budgeted.
So it was pulled from our budget then?
It's not in the budget.
It wasn't in the budget
not
last
in the
year,
budget.
in the line items. It wasn't in Tiffany's Parks and Rec budget from last year. I think that's what I'm
Correct, it
guessing.
wasn't. And
It was never promised to.
I was going
It's
to
not like
say,
we
so
pulled the money.
the charter amendment had nothing to do with it because we're saying we never budgeted for it up front, and that was prior to.
One of the other
any of
things that you
stuff
shared in
happening.
that same letter was that we have made some kind of less of a commitment to their supporting some of their activities in the parade. The chief, as far as I know, that we've done nothing in that.
We haven't done anything.
We have not
different.
changed anything that was typically planned in with any of the organizations that we support as a city. I mean, I'm not saying at some point we might not have to be questioned about that from other people that are on the council. We may have to, but at this point, no, we haven't told the chief, oh, no, we can't provide us enough officers. I think it's that something that they mentioned.
Have they contacted you or anybody at the city and ask any of these things? And we
Yes,
said
I had a
no,
meeting
or-
with them with the new coordinator for Bowlegs, and we haven't changed anything with police for the parade. We're
No.
doing all of everything that we have in the past.
And in all fairness, it's a relatively minor thing for us because we do have some part-time officers, I think, that the chief keeps on staff, and all those positions are filled that I know if we just put a new one on. So as far as I know, there's nothing has changed with the relationship with Bowlegs. And again, I go back to during a campaign, anything is fair game for you elected officials. I've been down that road myself. So
Again, it's less about them. I could care less
Right.
about what their opinion is or what they do, but it is an event that our citizens do like, and if it's something that we're saying that the charter amendment prevents us from doing, I would probably tend to lean on, hey, if we've had a commitment that we've consistently been doing in the past, and it's something that we do every year and stuff like that, then I would say, hey, let's give them the $5,000, and we've got a $60 million budget that we can find the $5,000 somewhere else in that
And
we
it's
can
two, right?
we can shift in that It was direction. either 2,000 or 2,500, but they sponsored 5,000 of that.
The number
$5,000.
I got was 5,000. So you would think with a bunch of CPAs and mortgage brokers and stuff like that, they could do math, but apparently they can't even hardly interpret what's supposed to be done and what.
They saved the shots for the Pirates, man.
But okay, all right. So there you go.
Thank you.
Now you know.
Mr. Walker.
Nothing to add.
Mr. Allegretto.
I would just want to say, one, I hadn't even heard of that one, so interesting thing here tonight to learn of that. Secondly, I just would say that, and this is just kind of a generic thing, but I feel like I've been around more teachers and educators recently in several different scenarios over the last 3 or 4 weeks that I don't normally get those kind of interactions, and I've just been super impressed with teachers in our community, with people that volunteer with youth league coaches, which I've certainly done, certainly not as well as others that I've seen do it, but mainly teachers in this community that just do stuff that's so far and above and beyond what they're paid to do, what their budget is, you know, whether it's buying stuff to decorate their classroom or going out of their way to make sure some kids got everything they need to be successful. I've just really been impressed. So if there's teachers that watch these meetings regularly, don't do that. It's we could summarize it maybe better for you, and you can spend your time doing something else, because what you do is incredible. And even to the retired teachers that live in our community and people that have spent that time. I know Councilman Schmidt's been an educator as well, and just impressive people on the whole. Thankful for them. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Peter.
Yeah, I'd like to give a lot of thank yous as well, not so much to the teachers though, but thank you, Dennis, for all your positive energy. I've heard nothing but great things from most all of staff about how
doing the best I can for you guys.
like really hands-on and active you've been. You've gone to a lot of departments and really trying to learn. And so thank you for the energy. And all the other directors and everybody that's always here at the regular meetings. It's good to see all the faces, whether you're a director or not. I want to give a shout out to Jacob especially, because he was here a few meetings ago. The golf course is doing great, doing awesome. And I asked him next time I saw him, I said, hey man, you're at the meeting, you never said anything, you're not normally there, why? And he said, I want to be more involved. I don't want to just work in the city. I don't want to just run the golf course. I want to know what's going on at the meetings. I want to know what's being said. So I think it's cool. I know we always talk about how good our people are. And like you've always said, you're only as good as your people. But for some, it really means a lot to me when you care enough to not just collect the check and put in your 40. When you want to do something. I'm not just saying him. We have a lot of people that do extra stuff. But when you care about your city and you get involved, it makes us all better.
I feel like I owe this to you guys too, because it involves Mr. Hill. Jacob has been a great addition to the golf course, and we missed Mr. Peters so much, and Tiffany and I kind of collaborated on how we could make that department even better. And one of the things was, without Jeff's expertise in this position that I sit in right now, just in the interim, is that maybe we should make some changes. So one of the things was I worked with Richie, our superintendent out there, which the course is going to look so good after those greens go in. And we do think as a staff, we think that it's one of the gems of the city, and it will continue to improve with some of the leadership that's out there. So in doing so, you know, I kind of announced it here, I was going to have it sent it to all of the employees yet, but, you know, Jacob, we've moved him to the director of the golf course. So he's a golf course director. Actually, I got it backwards. But we wanted to make a change there and get some of that off of Tiffany and not have to have such a broad reporting for her. And the golf course has grown a good bit. So and we think it will continue to grow with some of the new things that are going on, the expenditure that the TDC has helped the city with, and those new greens and some of the improvements. So it's allowed us to, I think, allow it to grow on its own, and also it helps our Parks and Rec to focus kind of on what they're doing. You know, as you guys know, they've got a bunch of projects going. One of the things I think has slowed that down is she's been spread so thin now that, you know, Jeff is gone. So moving that forward will be more of a focus of some of those things. I think it just makes things better overall. I've made small changes that I thought were on your behalf. Most of you I've shared that with, those steps that we've made, and tried to make things better for you. But I think that will be a positive step for the golf course and for the Parks and Rec department. So I just didn't want you to hear about that another way. I'm going to directly mail. I did it at the staff meeting. I mentioned to all the directors that Jacob was going to have that promotion, and now I'll go ahead and email all the employees that we also have a new director.
That's awesome. We share the success he's had. I mean, just with the driving range you were telling me the other day.
Well, the ball, the use of the new ball machine has been tremendous. That was one of the things that kind of impressed me. It was a small one, but it was one of many that I was impressed with when I visited the golf course. Because as you guys know, it's been a long time since I was out there on a regular basis, and Jim Frazier did a great job. He's a David Trim back, so there's been a lot of activity out there. Mr. Peters' father was out there as an interim for us. He did a great job. I mean, we've got some great directors of golf out there. But when I went out there and I saw some of the things that a young guy that had been involved in the private sector for so many years, and some of the guys that he'd worked for, Mr. Lee was here, he had worked for him at Indian Bayou. He brought a lot of education. He's had a family and a lifetime of golf, and I was very impressed. And it'll allow him to grow in that operation. But in seeing some of the things he did, like we've had I told Councilman Meade about this today at lunch, but our ball use on the driving range has just gone way up with the use of the new machine, and being able to keep that full so the golfers never have an empty machine. Another thing it did was allow us to not have one FTE out there that was manning that particular area, kind of monitoring things, making sure everything's done with a credit card now. So just smoothing that one little piece is going to be a revenue source over the years. Now we still have to pay for the machine, and that'll get paid for over time, but the pro shop. Any of you that have gone to the pro shop? Some of the new product that's coming out there. He's doing golf fittings. He's really doing a lot of proactive things. That again, I think modifications to the referendum, because these are going to be incomes and things that are outside of the referendum that are going to affect things. You're stuck at 3%. You could clearly grow it out there way beyond where it is, but helps our general revenue fund and helps some of our other areas like a library that doesn't create as much resources for us, or parks, the baseball fields and that don't create as much. This is somewhere that does create quite a bit of profit, especially if it's managed and run properly. And I just think that this is a positive change. You guys talked about small business. Jacob's been a small business guy, as I have, as many of you guys are, as Nick, all of us. And he has that passion, I think, with him. And I wish him all the best, and I hope he encourages that as well. But it's a small change, but I think it'll be very meaningful for when I'm gone, and even as you guys are going to be gone. So anyway, just something I want to share tonight. I'm sorry I'm out of order on my comments, but Bryce, I appreciate you bringing that up. But I appreciate it. Thank you.
Great stuff. Congratulations, Jacob.
All done?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm just going to end the night by congratulating Mr. Browning, Mr. Merrill, and Ms. Riley. They'll be up here 1st of April. And nothing else happening?